Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So I have a special guest today. You might recognize him. I've talked about him before. I've shared some clips of him over on Steve Bannon's show, on Owen Schroyer's show. This is Mark Mitchell. He is formerly of Rasmussen polling. He has now started his own company. He's calling it the Honest Poll because he is truly one of the few unicorn pollsters who tells the truth, regardless of his political stance. I will warn you, he comes from the right. As you all know, I am a progressive, but there is a lot of crossover, as you guys are going to hear today, because we both, I believe, think highly of, believe in populist programs and policies for the country and how to make America better and help the American people. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be here. And again, I saw the YouTube video you did of my own Schroyer interview. I was really impressed. I hadn't heard of you before. You're really open-minded about everything we were saying. And, I'm really in this because of truth. And we all have our own political arcs. Mine's probably very different than yours. But I'm old enough to remember, for instance, in the MAGA movement, when we got a whole bunch of Bernie bros in 2016 and everybody thought it was super cool. And they were like, oh, look, a Muslim wearing a MAGA hat. That's amazing. This is a big tent coalition. And all of a sudden, things change. And it's like, well, okay, what are we even doing here? Are we like regressing? I thought the idea was like to improve America based on what a lot of people in the electorate perceive to be a good set of domestic policy agendas. And that's like currently not the case. So the way I perceive my job as a pollster is very different than what you see mostly in the industry. And we can get into it in finer detail if you want. But I believe in George Gallup's idea of what the industry should be, which is to measure what the voters want, because they tend to not get represented in Washington, D.C. And I think that is worse than it's ever been. And almost every pollster gets corrupted by something or another. And I can give you tons of examples if you want to go into them on the right, specifically about Iran. And the way that I feel like I can build credibility and speak for the people is by putting out a lot of commentary where people can judge it based on what my objective reasoning is, by putting out a body of work showing that I'm willing to ask any question. And we did. I'm the only one in the entire polling industry that asked about vaccines, about election integrity. And these are not right-left issues. They are not. And we had major negative ramifications for doing that. And that ultimately my business is going to be funded by the people. They're going to subscriptions, YouTube, Twitter, and all this stuff. And so that's the way, I feel like I can convey. I am trying to get America to a better place.
Well, that's really cool. I didn't realize that you were being funded privately by just small dollar donors. So that's actually very cool. I want to kind of set this up for the audience, for anybody who didn't see that show that I did of you with Owen. So for anyone who didn't watch that, Mark was on Owen Schroyer's show. Owen used to be with Alex Jones over at what is it called? What was it used to be called?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And he had a falling out. They had a break. He started his own thing. So he had Mark on, and they were talking about what the administration is kind of missing in the polling, what they're not paying attention to, or maybe they're being insulated from it. And then also you were talking with him about your previous gig where you had been for I don't know how long at Rasmussen. Can you tell my audience what was the impetus for your new policy, or your not new policy, your new company and your new polling outfit?
So polling used to not be commoditized. It used to be something only rich and powerful or well-funded corporations or academia could do. And then it became kind of commoditized. Anybody can do a poll right now. It's not that hard. We even have an example today where somebody put a poll out in one of these races and then wrapped it up after like one poll and said, no, just kidding, guys. So, what happens is that there's a lot of polling out there and it makes less money and they have less control over it. And so it tends to get co-opted by where the money is. And so generally, big broad brushes, I don't want anybody freaking out, throwing anything at the TV. But on the left, polling tends to be the domain of dark money NGOs, where they're trying to push a certain progressive outcome. And that might be in the benefit of people or not. Like it depends, right? Or like bad numbers, lying numbers are obviously bad. Manipulative polling is obviously bad. And it happens a lot there. I've seen it. Or major corporate media pollsters, where they are trying to shill for usually not just Republican, Democrat, but in a certain establishment candidate. And that would include like Fox News adjacent kind of things, right? So then on the right, it's more of like, if you understand the way the Republican Party dynamic works, it's all about like getting a cut of the gravy train. And it's very eat what you kill, backstab people, and carve out donor buck niches, right? So there, what pays tends to be corporate lobbyists or major Republican political action committees. And we just had a very recent example with Rasmussen. So Rasmussen has been an independent pollster for over 20 years. I came into the organization 5 years ago. It was on the decline. I literally saved it. I made major changes, including making their methodology cheaper, doing a pretty good job in 24 cycle. I was the only one that had Trump up. I was the only daily tracking poll, and I was the only one that had Trump winning the national popular vote the entire time. Not a single other pollster did that. And then, well, like Rich Barris had polls out that said that. And I also started commentary. I started YouTube. I think that's important so people can judge my ability not to be unbiased, but to be objective about what the numbers say, to prove I'm trying to put the American people first. So we got pretty influential. I got invited to the White House in November, trying to help Trump do better on his agenda to help Americans. He didn't listen to anything I said. And in January and February, I was trying. No, we could go into that too. I mean, he was talking about Lindsey Graham's golf swing. It was just embarrassing. And then in January and February, I was trying to stop this Iran strike because I knew, on top of all of these other messaging betrayals that Trump was doing to his core base, this one would be a big one that you couldn't just sort of like wave a magic wand and make it go away. So in the background, behind the scenes, the private equity owners of Rasmussen Reports had become cozier with some of these Republican pollsters, the same ones that make all of their money on political action committees. And essentially what I was told is that there was a meeting had about one of these political action committees and how they were going to spend money in the midterms, and that there was an opportunity for Rasmussen to raise money from them, and that my criticism of Trump, even though it was objective and in the interests of the American people, would be unhelpful in raising that money. And I was told to cease all commentary, even though it saved the business. YouTube revenue saved our business. Wow. And so they shut down my YouTube channel. And so it's like, okay, well, I got to go do my own thing now. And so now I have no editorial, like I have full control, and it will be that way for the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I give you credit, definitely, for not just going along to get along, and being honest. And that's one of the reasons, I responded to you when you reached out, because I have seen you do that. I have seen you go into right-wing spaces and just tell the truth and just give the facts. And I'm a total stats nerd. like math was my favorite subject in school, and I just love, spreadsheets, and I love looking at all the back end and sifting through the numbers and looking for the hidden meaning and all that.
You should be a pollster.
I know. If I didn't do this, I probably would be. I'm like a total geek with the whole thing. But so this was very exciting to get to speak with you about it and go through what you're learning and talk numbers and stats. I love looking at the polls. I do pretty much weekly a breakdown of the polls. And here's the thing, in 2024, I told my audience the truth. I told them that Donald Trump had a very good chance of winning. I pissed off a lot of people in my audience because they didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear that Kamala Harris was a sure thing. But between what I was seeing in the polling, she was up in a few, but it was, all within the margin of error. It was very close. He was up, she was up. I mean, it was never a steady, drumbeat of, oh, she's going to win. And then I coupled that with what I was hearing in a ton of focus groups that I watch and listen to every week. And it was telling me she was in trouble. It was a very close call, which, that's the way it worked out. I mean, he won by 1.5%. So, but yeah, I like telling the truth. It just, to me, it doesn't serve my audience to bullshit them and to try to, you know, Democrat wash things. And even though I'm a progressive, to me, you lose credibility. Which is, that's one thing I want to ask you about. And this is, the reason I think you reached out to me, because we had a bit of a disagreement over you going and talking with Trump. And you said to me in the Twitter message that you believe that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
For me, I question, do you think that that undermines your credibility?
I mean, like, no, I would talk to anybody about polling, even if it was like Charles Manson. If he was objective and wanted to sit down and learn something, like, you can't cancel people for who they talk to. You just can't. And I'm trying to, again, I'm very clear about my objective and all my messaging. Like, I'm not all over the place, right? Like, the core is to get Americans to a better place by pursuing the policies that they want that are intelligent. And I don't want to get it. We can, but like not in this answer. When Republicans voted for, when people, not just Republicans, a lot of people voted for Trump in 2024, they were doing it because it was a referendum on institutional trust and overreach. They don't trust the federal government. It was a referendum essentially on an oligarchic economy that doesn't work, the death of the American dream. And it was a referendum on egregious optics about a cultural decline because of the way that we take people into America. Let's just put it that way. And so when you look at mass deportations, they were very popular, way more popular than Trump. When you look at going after corporations and improving the middle, way more popular than Trump. When you look at like draining the swamp and arresting people that did things wrong in DC, way more popular than Trump. And so that, like, America is, all of America, no, and a lot of people are like retarded, but most of America wants just things fixed. That's it. And so when Trump gets in on a mandate to fix things, and then the first thing he does is some other thing that people don't want, I'm going to say, like, you're like, what are we doing here? Like, this is, Americans are going to like have their trust destroyed. Like, this is an opportunity to move the ball downfield in the right direction. And notice, I'm not saying Republican policies. Like, these aren't objectively not even Republican policies.
Right.
And so a year ago, that's what I started doing. Now, did I seek to have influence in the White House? Was I like calling people up and back? No, they, like, somebody in the White House looked at what I was saying and said, Trump needs to hear more of this because the American people need to come first. So they invited me down, and it wasn't some like super secret meeting. The Washington Post wrote an article about it, and I got time to sit in front of them. And I said, in November, I said, you're going to lose the midterms, not because I want Republicans again to win, because I want Americans to get what they voted for. And I said, if you want to win, you have to remember why you were elected and do what Americans voted for. And I said, it's like, don't tear gas people in the face with ICE, raid the businesses, or go after banking, or like do your mass deportations, but not in this showy, egregious anti-American way. And I said, economic populism has to be the main event. And you're out there bragging about the stock market. It's not going to work. You're going to just be pissing people off. And then you have to show people visible government reform. And that doesn't mean, like, listen, I love Doge, and Doge was smart, and Doge was the best thing the Republicans ever had, but was not well executed. Well, I can explain why.
We would definitely disagree on that.
Well, what I would say is there was a mandate for fiscal reform.
I agree with that. Crazy. I agree with that. The way it was done, and
no, it was hostile to federal workers and not focused on the fraud and audits and stuff.
I mean, basically, we were lied to. I mean, there's been.
That's true. You were told that we would get $1 trillion cut out of the deficit because of waste, fraud, and abuse. And the Republicans, in
Mhm.
my opinion, based on what I know, killed the Doge. The Republicans did. And that's because they ultimately want to maintain the status quo in Washington, D.C., just like the Democrat establishment does. So, but like
Yeah, I don't know. I think, uh, when I say we were lied to, we were told that they did find fraud, but yet not one person has been brought up on charges. You know,
okay,
where is,
yeah.
again, where is all this money, that they supposedly were saving by cutting all of these services and programs? I mean, people have lost healthcare, people, Americans, you can say what you want about, foreign aid, but here in America, like, Americans are suffering because of this. And I do these FAFO videos every week, and I see and hear the stories of Trump voters who have had their aid cut, who are turning on him. So,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
think that's all fair points, 100%. I would say, like, again, it was not a well-run thing. And I think that there is very strong bipartisan agreement that the government is extremely wasteful and that there's a lot of fraud in the government. And so
Yeah.
I think that should have been first and foremost. And whether it was or not, again, it doesn't matter, because in my opinion, the Republican establishment is the one that essentially killed Doge behind the scenes, because they wanted to continue to do the pork barrel bills and the favor and back scratching, just like the Democrats do when the Democrats get into office. And ultimately, even though the Americans had the stomach to see a significant amount of government spending cut, Washington, D.C. did not. And so obviously it was DOA. And now where we're at is with higher deficits than we've ever had, and it's going to get worse.
Mhm.
And everybody's going to remember that this was the one chance. And the important thing about Doge, though, even though there were problems with it, is that the polling said in March, when all this stuff was happening, the fork in the road email had already been sent, people were crying about losing their jobs. Doge was very popular with the under 40 voter, and Trump had a 60% approval rating with the under 40 voter. And so there is some aspect of these people who just want accountability, and tiers are part of the process. They're kind of they're weird. We could go into it. They
Mhm.
support socialistic policies, but they would prefer the free market. They think the economic system has failed them, and they want to see pain, and because they're mad. And
Mhm.
like, they're a weird mix, and they're a political football, as you're seeing with the DSA candidates, and as you're seeing with kind of like the death of core MAGA. Like, MAGA has lost all
Mhm.
these people and had them.
Yeah.
But like, on your other point, just to make it short, so like I get to the White House, and it's like, okay, I gave him information. I did it from the perspective of the American people. He ignored it at his own peril. And I'm not trying to overinflate my like contribution, but he was talking about billionaires giving him statues and Lindsey Graham golfing. And then when I I've sent polling to the White House like multiple times, and it was
Mhm.
all on things that they completely made a mistake on. Like, his treatment of the Epstein case was egregiously bad, like
Yeah.
borderline retarded. And
That
I
was a
told
that
them,
was a turning point for sure.
yeah. And then the one was the Iran strike. So now you just have to understand, like, Trump is surrounded by people who are all telling him to do things, and they all
Mhm.
have reasons. And almost every one of those reasons is going to be manipulated. And that has happened a lot. Trump is being selectively shown polling. And it's very easy to make a case that you could do the Iran strike and you'd be a hero because you got rid of Iranian nuclear program. And yes,
Mhm.
people don't want the Iran nuke, but they also think it's problem like number 32 on the list of priorities.
Well,
And
yeah,
so,
especially when his own people said that they weren't working on a nuke, and when, there was a fatwa issued against obtaining a nuke, and then you go kill the guy who issued the fatwa, and
yeah,
and now you have a more radical extremist regime in charge, so ensuring that now they're gonna want a nuke because they're like, "Yeah, if we had a nuke, this wouldn't have
yeah.
happened."
So what was happening on the
Shit show.
right is you understand, like, no leftist poll would be shown to Trump about that. He wouldn't listen to him, right? Because
Mhm,
he doesn't think anything that doesn't get shown on Fox News is real life. And so you
mhm,
have to understand that any polling he's going to get shown is going to be from traditionally Republican pollsters that get compensated out of political action committees. And over the Iran strike, the goal is to be a prostitute and show how many tricks you can turn by putting out like manipulated numbers to show that it would be popular. And they've done this. So they would ask a question like, Trump just ordered the military to take out the Ayatollah and get rid of Iran's nuclear program. Do you support or oppose the strike? Now, most people aren't going to have that context when they hear that Trump made the strike. And so that's a fantasy land scenario in somebody's head. And it primes them to give a positive response. So in those kind of questions, you'd see like a 55 to 25, like a plus 30. Oh yeah, let's blow this country up.
Right.
And so what I did in January was gave the White House a poll that was just like, do you support a strike to attempt to change the regime in Iran? Very straightforward question. It was only 37%, which would make it the least approved of military strike, like literally ever. They had that information. Person I gave it to was very confident that it was being used to prevent this strike. And then they got overruled, and they got overruled by people manipulating Trump. And so the fact is, he's always like, whoever's in that spot is going to be manipulated. And so if I can get in there and represent the American people, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one, right, that like is trying to do this. And you can agree or disagree with whether I'm doing that well, but I'm telling you, there are not many other people in that fight at all. So the American voter did not say on the strike against Iran, except for like literally pretty much me. Right. So
let me ask you, because it sounds like you had heard before they launched this attack in February that this was in the works. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a big will they, won't they, all the way through January. I did this polling set in January. I had input from the vice president's team and on the kind of things they wanted to see, including like war casualty questions. 51% of America said they would stomach 10 or fewer deaths. So there were so many signs in this set of polling that this was a really retarded idea.
Yeah.
And we did it. And we didn't do it for the American people.
No, we did it for Israel.
Yeah.
Which, I have my own thoughts on how they get him to do things, and other world leaders, both on both sides of the aisle. And it rhymes with Epstein.
Yeah.
But
yeah. The one thing I would say about Epstein, like totally misplayed. Like Trump literally has nobody to blame but himself for that initial betrayal that derailed his presidency. It really did derail his presidency, because all he had to do is say, oh, the FBI is looking at it. Yeah, people care about this. Obviously, two-tiered justice. We shouldn't have that. Let the FBI look at it. And it would have gone away. And, he attacked his followers, which is not a sign of like a healthy political movement. Now, Trump's kind of breaking with Israel right now. And so I think you can argue, like this is just personal conjecture, having been there, having seen the way Trump reacted to this, having heard from other people what's going on. I think it was Lindsey Graham. I really just think it was like people that related to Fox News who just said, you're going to be a hero. Obama couldn't do this. Look, Venezuela went off without a hitch. And maybe what I really fear is the Republicans will give you the votes you want on the SAVE Act in the Senate if you get this done for them. Like, I think things like that. And I'm just guessing, because he's breaking with Israel now, and Israel's in a really tough spot. So I got yelled at by the right a year ago because I was saying that Israel PR is terrible. They're losing the plot. I was one of the first people to say it, even before Gallup and Pew came out and showed it. Now Israel's support in the U.S. over Palestine is down to 34%, including the halfway mark for Republicans even. And so they've completely become a pariah. They're going to be an albatross around any political party that vociferously supports them, let alone I don't know if they'll deny them or not. But now Israel's in a situation where we need to extricate ourselves from this debacle in the Middle East, which puts Israel in a worse off spot than they were when this whole thing started. And so depending on how much influence you think, that puts us in a pretty dangerous spot.
Yeah, I think that Israel played an outsized role, but I do agree that Lindsey Graham definitely had Trump's ear and was pushing from this side about the Iran war. And I think that he saw, this quick, easy in, easy out with Venezuela, and he got just bamboozled into thinking, oh, it's just going to be like that. We're just going to,
Yeah.
drop some bombs and you'll, like you said, you'll be a hero and
No, I don't think we
totally.
disagree here. Like the Wall Street Journal said that Lindsay was going over to Israel to get briefed by the Israeli government on how to make Trump more willing to do this. And then not only that, like
Mhm.
Trump has not helped himself with his biggest backer and her ties to certain organizations, and the way that he's come out and just literally bragged about how she calls him up and asks him to do things for Israel all day. Obviously not helpful for this narrative that he's controlled by Israel. And then you look at JD Vance, and JD Vance last October comes out and says, well, this president isn't owned by Israel. And then the J Post and the Times of Israel freak out. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, how can he
Yeah.
imply that Trump is not owned by Israel? It's bad.
Yeah.
Like it really is bad.
Yeah, speaking of JD Vance, I was very struck by your comments about how JD Vance should basically let Marco Rubio be the sacrificial lamb in 2028 and hold out till 2032. Do you really think in 4 years after that people will go, "Oh, yeah, he's a good guy. He's anti-war. He would never steer us wrong." Like
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll preface this like it doesn't look like you're happy with the bench that you guys got. And it doesn't matter probably because it'll be a referendum on Trump. But on the right, JD Vance, well, I've talked to him personally, and he is an economic populist. Now, you can argue about whether he would hold up to the system better or worse than Trump, but he fundamentally is an economic populist and think the Republicans need to become economic populist or they will like basically be a defunct party. I'm kind of putting words in this, but like that's what my feel is. And I also think he's a man of integrity. And I also think he is a lot more clever than your traditional Republican because he's been very courageous about things he's said that would not be tolerated by your average establishment Republican. And these are all things that are generally like mode positive positions for younger people. And so I think he is in some ways has the potential to be a champion for younger people. Now, whether you agree with that or not, what I will say from a polling perspective is a year ago, he was beating everybody but Bernie Sanders in matchups. And he was far and away the Republican primary person to take on Trump. In fact, he was doing way better than Trump was back in April of 2022. So he was the heir apparent. Because of the Iran strike, he's lost a lot of support, but he's still the heir apparent. But now I think you could look at it and say he's not going to have any coattails. And not only that, but the major backers in the Republican Party, A, don't want somebody that is willing to say that he's not owned by Israel, and B, don't want somebody who's an economic populist. And so I think everybody around JD is looking at Rubio and is saying, well, he'll do whatever we want. He's an establishment guy,
Yeah.
and so like he'll essentially be Mitt Romney 2.0, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me how Rubio is kind of fooled the MAGA right as of now into thinking that he's the next guy. He's it. Like, it's like, do you not know that he's no different than Lindsey Graham? He's no different than all of the establishment Republicans, all of the warmongering Republicans. I mean, I don't know how he's doing it, but I hear this in focus groups. Like I will hear swing voters who went from Biden to Trump, and they are absolutely fooled by him. I really like that Marco Rubio. I think I might vote for him. I'm like, what are you talking about? You guys wanted a populist. You guys wanted someone who's anti-war and like gonna.
Yeah, there's a civil war. I'm sorry. There's a civil war going on the right now. And the weird thing is that it's like not along ideological lines like conservative or non-conservative. It's like basically along whether you think Trump betrayed you or not, right? And so I was not a pollster in 2016, and I'll be the first to say that I was early aboard the MAGA train because I'm like, oh, look, an outsider who's going to come in and blow up one of the establishment parties, like rock on. And not only that, he was actually like he had a coherent populist message. It was also the drain the swamp. It's like what's not to love? And I remember that coalition, especially the people who, in my opinion, helped get him elected, were all these online keyboard warriors. There was a lot of Bernie bros. There were a lot of minorities, but it was generally like young men. And a lot of these people were not traditional Republican voters, right? And so
Right.
Trump has gained and gained and gained those people. And in 2024, it got to the point where between 35 and 40% in my polls of Trump supporters was from independents and crossover Democrats, like union people and like, just all this big tent coalition who, like,
Yeah.
a lot of them loved the cult of personality. A lot of them didn't, right? But they all knew what MAGA was. Those people got betrayed. A lot of them think that, and they're like gone, never to return. And
Yeah.
so what you have is people who are anti-Trump up until about last year. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, like, we're MAGA now because we're still sticking with Trump. And it's like, okay, well, his political capital is just about shot. Democrats win Congress. MAGA's done. And
Yeah.
they want to rule over the ashes. And what they're doing is this circular firing squad counter signaling all these people that left that say, well, you need to give Trump loyalty. Well, it's like, why? They're not Republicans. They're not being represented. They owe no loyalty to Trump. They got burned. And it's those people who, quite frankly, I think have political action committee funding and probably some foreign funding behind them that are trying to like circle the wagons around this dying piece of MAGA, which is just like, yeah, Trump's infallible. It's like, no, he sucks right now. He's not infallible.
Yeah, I call them MAGA's messy bitches. They are just, they're all at each other's throat. You got Laura Loomer and Candace Owens. And yeah, but I look at it as, you've got the MAGA coalition still. Those are the ones I call the Kool-Aid cult, that just, he can do no wrong. Everything's perfect. It's sunshine and roses. No, gasoline is totally cheap right now. And then you've got the America Firsters, who were made up of, like you said, it could be independents, it could be, previous people who didn't ever vote, some Democrats, a lot of the Maha people, who also feel betrayed right now for very good reason. And yeah, they're not in the cult. They see things more clearly, even though they still don't like Democrats. They still, and I see a lot of them online, and they still have this very skewed vision or view of who we are on the left. And I don't know, you may agree with some of them, but like, I am very pro 2A. My husband has a shit ton of guns.
Cool.
I don't believe in disarming people, especially when you have a government like we have right now, that is, in my opinion, has been very authoritarian, very fascist leaning, and what we see with ICE. But I definitely think we should have stronger gun laws when it comes to crazy people. My father was one of them who had a whole gun collection and should never have been anywhere near a gun. So I do believe in red flag laws to some degree, especially for spousal abuse cases. I definitely think we need a secure border. We need to know who's coming in. I mean, I don't want terrorists coming in, right? So we need to know.
Yeah.
We need to have a check on that. But I do believe in immigration. I do believe that it makes our society better. We're seeing the fallout in Texas, which actually I do want to ask you about that. That was something that came up when you were on Owen's show. It's so hard to say Owen Schroyer's show. I always want to combine his first and last name.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned, and this is one area where I question, like, if you're meeting with Trump, is your bias coming in? Because we all have a bias,
Sure.
right? Even though we try to be fair and balanced and honest, like, I'm a progressive. So of course, everything's going to come through that lens with me. You had made a comment to Owen that one of the reasons, in your view, or based on what you're seeing in your polling, one of the reasons his immigration numbers are down is because he's not doing enough. He's not doing as many deportations as what he promised.
Yeah.
And I know there is some of that. Like, I see MAGA Twitter and they definitely are like, no, we want more. We want it more cruel. We want, heads on pikes and get everybody out. I don't care if they committed crimes, I don't care if they've been here 20 years. So I do see some of that, But what I'm seeing in polling and what I have heard in focus group after focus group of swing voters who just voted for Trump in 2024, I would say the vast, like 75, 80% think that he has gone too far. He's being too cruel.
So I did an op-ed for Real Clear Politics that people can check out back in February, about a week before I was shut down. And what I said was like, essentially, that people still want illegals gone, right? By a strong majority. And that also, by the way, they hate corporations. And oh, by the way, the idea, and it is true that the polling showed that there was increasingly blowback to ICE operations. So it's like, if you were, this is a big answer. It'll get to Tucker.
Okay.
But if you're genuine about delivering mass deportations the best way for American people, you would do it in a way that doesn't endanger the mass deportation operation. And in my opinion, a lot of the decisions that were made about how we were going to do this were just like wrong. Like, you're going to send shock troops into blue state cities, and you think that's going to go well. And like, it wasn't. They were picking that for the wrong reason. The right way to do this is go raid Tyson's meatpacking plant and then find the hell out of them, and then tax remittances and whatever. And it's like, we can agree or disagree about whether those are humane or not, but we're not going to be launching tear gas canisters into protesters' faces. Right? So it's a systemic way to fix what has been a systemic problem. And so that's what I personally believe. And I kind of like, I'm more of a rule of law guy. And so I think, like, fundamentally, it's like, I get the whole asylum thing. If you're a real refugee, right? Like, I get it. And I get that we have an immigration system that's terrible too, but it's like, okay, the right answer is to reform that, not to allow the right and the left to just like use it as like a reason to just sweep these people in unvetted. And let's not forget the economic signal, which in my opinion is the reason why we need mass deportations, because neither party has been pro-worker. They want these people for votes. They want these people for repressed wages. Like, I don't buy that thing that Americans won't pick crops. They will, if you pay them like the right wage, right? And it's like, that's what capitalism does. It sets prices on things, and we've repressed wages for 20 or 30 years because of both parties. But that aside, I think one of the real problem here is that Trump has not been able to stay on message. And so in 2016, for him, the bar was very low. He didn't win because he was super popular. He mostly won because Hillary sucked. And that's my personal take on it.
I agree. I voted for her, and I agree. After voting for Bernie.
But in 2024, there was a lot more of this sort of existential need, because people had had their businesses shut down. Inflation was ridiculous. And like, there was like, hey, it kind of needs to work this time. And in my opinion, that requires somebody who's more on target, like a wartime president. Well, what's the war? It's the war for the American dream. It's the war on whatever our economic system is that needs to be fixed. And so if you get in and you like take mass immigration, the problem I see with MAGA is that in retrospect, I think people will see that it was always just kind of like a little bit of a charlatan act. And Trump was a really good brand man. But what Tucker's showing us with his 10 points is that if you really want a movement, and I don't know if that'll succeed or not, but if you really want a movement that is going to bring in as many people as possible, it can't be focused on policy. It needs to be focused on morals and values. Like, why are we doing this? And with Trump, you look at mass deportations, and I think people projected onto that. Well, Trump's doing mass deportations to protect the workers or to protect the rule of law. And in retrospect, I think we're going to find that he was just saying it to get elected, right? And so there hasn't been a moral core. And if like right and left people are going to come together and form some kind of youth populist coalition or whatever, there has to be like a moral core to these policies. It's like, okay, like, let's talk about why some people wanted to defund the police. And then on the right, we can say like, no, we don't want them gone because we're racist, right? That's not why we're doing this. It's literally because there's no jobs, or it's literally because our school systems are overburdened or whatever, right? Like, and
Uh, I
again,
take issue with it because I've seen so many stories. I've covered so many stories. Even in Texas, I think it was about a week or two ago, there was a More Perfect Union segment, and they went down to Texas. They were talking to a bunch of Hispanic people, business owners, and they were saying, yeah, they all voted for Trump. Across the board, they all voted for Trump. And they all said, yeah, we wanted to get out people who committed crimes. And we also, didn't like the flow, how many people were coming in overall. But this is just cruel. What he's doing is cruel. They arrested a nun down there in Texas. Like, that was a huge thing. They shot and killed that one man who was on his way to work. Shot him through the passenger side window. I mean, posed no harm to them whatsoever. Had been in the country for like 30 years, had a business, was successful, had raised a family here. I mean, people just see they're under attack, and even people who are here legally or people who are born here, just because they have black or brown skin, are so paranoid now that they are literally carrying documents with them
yeah.
because they're afraid. And this is America. We shouldn't be, show me your papers in America. I mean, that's just fucking German and
I
Nazi
agree with you
shit.
so much. I agree with you so much. I was one of the only people on the right to say that, which is that these optics are anti-American. And I was tracking this in the polling. There was a uptick in, like, it's tough to measure these things, but there was an uptick in the support for sanctuary cities. We asked questions about, do you support ICE or the anti-ICE rioters? And the questions were pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Like, the Hispanic voter voted for Trump in my polls. Yep. And even more than that, they supported mass deportations. And what they got.
I think there's a question though there, because like you had said earlier, people wanted the illegals out. And I think there's a disconnect between what the voters see as illegal and what they see as someone who commits illegal crimes, right?
So this specific question was, do you support or oppose Trump's policy of mass deportations? And that was a strong majority of people, including Hispanics. Now, whether or not, so like there are other questions that we've asked. I don't have them off the top of my head, but like a big chunk, but not a majority, support like dreamers and stuff like that. Like, so there is some sentiment that we want to get immigration in if it's talented people, but it's not this like this idea of just the criminal, just the one with a rap sheet. Like, I don't have that question. My gut is that it's like, it's not that big of a difference. Because again, this is an economic signal. This is only 35% of people today think their children will be better off than their parents. And that everybody, when they say, what's the economy? It's grocery prices and jobs. But like, grocery prices is a wage issue because we have an inflationary system, right? So so the optics were horrible, and they were not done in a way, in my opinion, that got Americans what they need, which is control over an out of control system in a way that puts American workers first and attempts to maintain cultural stability, right? And so the other thing I would submit, and again, there's like so many questions that are like close, but not exactly. Like, we asked Americans, okay, somebody who's in this country that is not a citizen, that didn't come here through a visa, what would you call that person? And it was over 60% of America used something with the word illegal in it. That had nothing to do with whether that person violated any laws or anything. So in most Americans' minds, when they see an illegal alien, they'll call them an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien, not this like idea of an undocumented immigrant. That's like 21% or something like that.
When was this polling that you're referring to? And when did you conduct this?
That was probably 24. True. Okay. Before the shock troops started, I will 100% admit. Yeah. But like nobody's even doing these questions. Like, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, I can only do so much.
Well, let me actually, I pulled some graphics. I pulled some stuff that I want to get your take on. So This was from Civics, and this one was, do you support or oppose abolishing ICE? You can see it's very close, but quite a few people support it. 44% compared to 49% who
Yeah.
oppose. Navigator Research on the left, do you support or oppose abolishing ICE? This one, 47% overall support it. Compared to 45% do not. On the right, they asked, what's your breakdown? Now, 27% said abolish altogether. The vast, plurality say let's make some changes. But, again, the majority of people see that there's an issue here. I bet a
Yeah.
YouGov, this was just recent. This was just last week. It's getting worse, It's 47% support abolishing ICE versus 41% who do not. This is the NPR Marist poll. And you can see even 27% of Republicans said they've gone too far. Overall, and 71% of independents. I mean, as you very well know, those are the people who swing elections. So
Yeah.
very, very key. And this next one, this was also just done by Texas A&M. If you look all the way down at the bottom two lines, it says 57% of these are all Texas voters say that the tactics used by ICE have gone too far.
Yeah, and remember, Texas is over 40% Hispanic now, I think, isn't it, right? Like, I'm not gonna disagree
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
This is the same trend that I found. Now, some of these pollsters are, like, I'm sorry, leftward leaning, but in the grand scheme of things, on a
Mhm.
question like this, we're talking about a 5 or 6 point net difference. It's not a big difference. And so in the fall of 25, again, that one question I remember, do you support ICE or the anti-ICE protesters? I think ICE only won by like 3 points then, and that was like, and I think a lot of this is like, all right, well, if they're not going to get us these mass deportations I wanted, and they're going to act like this, like, what's even the point? Like, I'm not going to come out and defend shock gloves. It's retarded. Like, this
Yeah.
is not being done in a serious manner. It quite frankly feels to me like it's being done in like a horrifying, meme focused, pump reel, let's put it out on true social manner
Mhm.
that dehumanizes people. And the MAGA that I remembered, it had an intellectual authority. And I'm not telling you they're big brain or that they're always right or whatever. But when they like showed a meme about launching somebody over the wall, you know what I mean? And Trump's, you have to go back. It's like, okay, well, like they kind of do have to go back. But now it's like, okay, you're showing me a pump reel of bashing indoors. It's like, what? This isn't America. Like, it's different.
Yeah,
There's
I
this
mean
aspect of Trump like lost this,
Mhm.
like, there have not been funny Trump memes out there. He has not, like, they've turned into something that like feels gross. You know what I mean? Like, we're bragging
Mhm.
about blowing people up. And it's like, come on, nobody wanted this war and you're showing me this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and I go back to, beyond the polling because as you said in the beginning, I mean, polling can be manipulated depending on how you ask the question, how how you filter through the respondents and, find people. This is why I love focus groups and why I like,
Yeah.
watching them and listening to them. And without fail, I mean, every single one that I have listened to, and this goes back to even before Renee Good and Alex Preddy were executed in the streets, but it got way worse after that. What I'm hearing from 75, 80%, sometimes 100% of the people in these focus groups is I voted for Trump. I wanted deportations, but they were kind of misled into thinking that there were, millions of people in our country who had committed crimes. And I hear over and over again, I wanted people out who committed crimes. I wanted the dangerous people out. Maybe if somebody just came over the border and crossed illegally in the last year or two, that's fine. But, people who've been here and built a life 10 years, 20 years, I'm not for that. They're American now. Like it's just
Yeah.
overwhelming that I hear this, and they think that it's what they're seeing is cruel, that, this isn't what they signed up for. This is not what they were expecting. I had a man on, I want to say a few months back, and his breaking point, he was a two-time Trump voter. His breaking point was the shooting of Renee Good. He said, "That's it. I'm going to vote for anyone in the midterms on the left because this needs to end. We need to stop this. This is out of control." So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
seeing it
No,
over and over and over.
I'm not disagreeing you. I'm just saying, like, I'm not specifically familiar with numbers that exactly make your case about very finely what people thought they were getting with mass deportations. I think it's very fair to say that what people see now is not, like, people wanted mass deportations. They still want mass deportations, but less. But the big hit has been Trump approval. Okay. And so they don't think that Trump is delivering on the promises of whatever they thought mass deportations was. There's definitely an aspect of people who is conciliatory to hardworking Mexicans that have been here a long time. There absolutely 100% is. But it's hard, again, to measure it in this particular instance. With the thing with Renee Good, yeah, these symbols matter a lot. She was a very symbolic of overreach of ICE and of an egregiously mishandled mass deportation operation. I can't tell you I saw necessarily change in Trump's numbers at the time because he was screwing so much other stuff up, right? Like that was around the time of the shutdown. You know what I mean? Like there was just a lot going on. So like the wheels have fallen off of this thing, and it was always it was going to require laser focus on delivering something that Americans wanted for MAGA 2.0 that was they were going to agree with. And, at the end of the day, the numbers I don't think matter as much as what the optics look like. And the optics suck. And it reinforces all these other things that Americans, again, feel like they're getting betrayed on in the Trump administration. And so, like, if you look at where his numbers are at in the first term, again, I think the bar was lower. In the first term, he actually had like a 48, 49, 50% approval rating for most of the back half of his term. After he got out of the like Russiagate stuff, he was doing pretty well. The economy was recovering. He was staying kind of on message until like COVID hit. Right now, he's tracking with 2006 George W. Bush in every pollster. You go to any pollster and look at those two people 20 years apart, they're the same thing.
Oh, speaking of which, I did pull this. Have you seen the the Reuters Ipsos poll out today?
What did they say? No.
Let me show you. So Harry Enton did a breakdown. I'll get your.
Well, he had a good segment on the New York Times that was pretty eye-opening because New York Times Siena is one. They're a better pollster just objectively than Reuters Ipsos. And what it showed is like in 5 or 6 of the Senate battleground states, Trump is underwater by double digits in Trump approval. And these are places like Texas, right? So,
yeah. So take a look at this. I want to get your reaction.
Net approval hits a term 2 low. Look at this. 31 points underwater. 31 points underwater according to Ipsos, the Reuters Ipsos poll. Look where he was at the beginning of term number 2. He was at plus 6 points. But his independents, who are the name of the game, they are the driver in elections. And just look at why these numbers are falling the way that they are. It is because of independents. Look at these drops. I mean, Trump's net approval rating among independents, term 2. He's 47 points underwater now. Look at this. Presidential net approval rating according to Ipsos at this point pre-midterm. Look at this. Trump 31 points underwater. Bush was also 31 points underwater. George W. Bush at this point before the 2006 midterm. Republicans lost not just the House, but the United States Senate as well. And if these numbers hold and this historical analogy holds, Democrats will have a very happy election night.
I mean, again,
it's one poll, but that's pretty damn low.
So Reuters Ipsos and Washington Post Ipsos are frequently a whipping boy for me because I can compare them to other left-leaning or media pollsters and show that even their numbers are off. If you don't want to listen to me or believe me, like the New York Times Sometimes they
Mhm.
fudge the headlines in order to put out a pro-Democrat establishment message, but
Mhm.
the crosstabs are usually pretty good. They're actually a decent pollster, at least, especially like recently, like they made some errors in the Trump era and fixed them, and they're good. And then
Mhm.
Emerson, academic pollster, they do a good job. And it's like -30. It's like directionally he's correct. Yes, Trump has very low approval rating right now,
Yeah.
but the Ipsos panel's got about an extra 10 or 15 points of Trump approval stank in it with the way they do their polling. So they literally just pick like 60,000 people and say, okay, you're America. And they just ask these people like the same questions over and over again. And
Mm.
it's like, okay, well, if that really represents America, you have to like adjust it for new voters, or you have some randomization effect, or
Mhm.
benchmark to other pollsters. And they just traditionally had a worse Trump approval than everybody else. Now, I would say like the Real Clear Politics aggregate, though, has been getting
Mhm.
better because there have been more pollsters on it. And what you see is like when they include Republican pollsters, it kind of like offsets the super progressive ones. And
Uh-huh.
Real Clear Politics aggregate, which just averages known pollsters in the industry, actually outperformed. It still wasn't as accurate as me, but it outperformed Nate Silver and the G. Elliott Morris guy.
Mm.
So like, I think it's like basically the right answer. Now, the reason I think people would follow me and talk to me is because, okay, well, the Real Clear Politics aggregate's only asking the election horse races. It's not asking these sentiment questions to understand what policy decisions should be.
Mhm.
Clear Politics Trump approval. He's underwater 20 right now. And it's
Okay.
like that's super left wing, super right wing pollsters canceling each other out.
Mhm.
And it's, you look at the chart, it's the worst it's been all term. Like he
Yeah.
sucked. This is like what you would expect to see. He's tracing George W. Bush's path through the wilderness after Iraq went south.
Yeah. Iraq, Katrina. Yeah.
Yeah, and in 06, I think the Democrats picked up 30 seats or something like that. So the generic ballot polling would all imply that something similar could come, although it might not be as many seats because of all the redistricting. But it's probably going to be a
Yeah.
Democrat pickup of the House.
Mhm.
And even if the Senate's close, the Republicans never really had the Senate. So, you know what I mean? Like with the Murkowskis and Collins and folks in there. So
Yeah.
Trump's agenda is dead.
What do you think
Yeah.
on Collins? You think she holds on?
I mean, it's a mess up there. And I think she's up pretty firmly in the polling.
The last I saw, it was pretty close against the new guy, Troy Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what the latest is. I haven't pulled the race personally.
Yeah, I
Collins versus
know, I just
Jackson.
did a segment the other day. New York Times went and spoke with a bunch of different, previous Collins voters, and it included some Democrats, a lot of independents, of course, and they're pretty down on her. I mean, there's some that
Yeah.
are sticking with her, but a lot of them said, I used to see her as a moderate. Now I just see her as a rubber stamp for Trump. And, she voted for Kavanaugh and guaranteed us that he wasn't going to touch abortion rights. And then he did. And so, yeah, I'm seeing just a lot of people kind of going, okay.
Yeah,
She's,
looking at this is a statistical dead heat in the poll. But I don't like what's going to decide this is sort of like September advertising and how much money
Mhm.
both of those races have to. It really is electioneering. I have no idea.
Yeah, she hasn't really had a chance to kind of shape the narrative on him yet.
Yeah. And nobody's paying attention right now either. Like August polling is traditionally
Yeah,
not
end
that
of
great.
summer. Yeah, people are checked out. Last minute
So
vacations.
yeah, I think this will be a referendum on the Trump administration. I think what you're seeing is that all the MAGA, the new MAGA Republicans are all like, oh, it's so great. All of Trump's endorsed picks are winning. But it's like, yeah, they're
Mhm.
winning because turnout's low because none of those 2024 people are coming back.
Yeah,
And like we've seen,
that's what I've seen.
yeah. So it's like pat yourself on the back, guys. It's not going to go well in the primary. And then I think what we're also going to see between now and November, like just thinking of what could happen, good or bad for Trump, that might actually move the numbers.
Mhm.
There's way more things that are bad. So
Yeah.
it's like, hey, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve empties and gas goes to $10 a gallon or whatever. Or
Mhm.
it's like like he's not going to get some super out of the blue win on Iran. Like it's not going to
Right.
happen. They
No,
could
no,
attack
they're
us.
going to drag it out at least through the
Yeah.
midterms.
Yeah, 100%. They're gonna keep blowing up ship every once in a while to keep this whole thing. They would be stupid to attack us, but that doesn't mean we're not in like potential false flag season. Which I think I'm not tinfoil hat. I think that's like a real like
Oh yeah.
concern. Yeah. Okay.
No, I wouldn't put it past Trump to give him the excuse, oh, well, see, he killed a bunch of people, killed a bunch of Americans. So, yeah, I have to drop a nuke or I have to send troops in or, yeah, or Israel. I could absolutely see Israel doing something, doing some sort of false flag. Yeah.
Yeah. There's never been more
Mhm.
pressure on the Likud party to maintain military involvement by the
Mhm.
U.S. when the U.S. really has no objective reason to continue it. In
Yeah.
fact, this has been horrifying for the American people in a way that it's going to take years to uncover.
Right.
And then what we also don't know is that there's been quibble back and forth on the right and the left, specifically about how much fundraising and how much is going to get allocated. And for some reason, people on the right will continuously overlook the amount of money that comes through Act Blue,
Mhm.
which like WinRed, but I think Act Blue is more egregious, probably has a lot of laundered money, to be honest with you. But, and how they're going to allocate that money, ballot harvesting versus advertising versus what happens on the right is it's just grift and gets allocated in non-economic manner, right?
Mhm.
But maybe they clean that. Like, so there is this idea of like the polling might be good, but we have to see who's going to electioneer better. And
Yeah.
then what the big sleeper hit is that what I heard as an outsider over a year ago is that there were multiple Democrats staffing offices that were working around the clock on real anti-corruption cases in the Trump administration,
Mm.
and that they're going to start like leaking these out, and some of them are horrifying, like the whole way in which the Live Nation DOJ investigation was shut down apparently is
Mm.
terrible, and everybody hates high ticket prices. So
Mhm.
I think that the Democrats have more gas in the tank. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way between now and November, as far as gaining control. And then I do think they've also learned their lesson about sort of what's the right way to pursue Trump. I think they're going to probably pick apart the administration with like real like cases, as opposed to like the Zelensky phone call was ill-advised. It made Trump
Mhm.
stronger, so.
Yeah, I have heard that they don't plan on impeaching, that they just plan on investigating instead. And there's plenty to work with over the
Yeah.
Epstein files, all of his grift, his crap coins and all these government contracts to his sons and all this crap going on. So yeah, plenty there. One thing I see, and I don't know if you're seeing this in your polling, but one thing I've kind of noticed in focus groups and in articles and different interviews that I'm seeing is that AI data centers are kind of the sleeper issue that I think both parties are kind of ignoring right now. That is going to play a very big part in the midterms.
As of the last poll I ran with Rasmussen in July, we hadn't asked about it yet.
Mm.
I haven't seen, just like in the normal course of my time on the internet, like polling about that. I really like, I'll ask you if there's what you feel to be a significant amount. Like, where are you, by the way? Are you on Twitter most of the time, or Blue Sky, or Threads, or?
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Not so much on Threads, but yeah, a lot on Twitter.
Like,
Some
there
on Blue Sky.
is there a massive groundswell of anti-data center stuff on the left? Because I just I wouldn't put it that high based on what I've seen on the right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing about it. I'm seeing a little bit online. but I am hearing more in articles that I'm reading, in interviews that I'm seeing, especially down in Texas. I can't remember if it was More Perfect Union or someone. It may have been MS Now that did interviews with Trump voters down in Texas, and a bunch of them are getting coalitions together. They're, going out recruiting other Trump voters that are all voting against Paxton and specifically over AI data centers,
Yeah.
because Texas is the number 2 state right now for AI data centers, only behind Virginia. And they're building these without public input, without public, knowledge beforehand. It's ruining people's lives. Like the sound is just 24/7. There was one lady who said, "My entire community is breaking ranks." And she's a lifelong Republican. She voted for Trump all 3 times, has never voted for a Democrat. She says, we are voting for anyone who is against AI data centers. And right now that's Tallarico. Because
So
she said
interesting.
they can't sell their homes. Obviously, nobody wants to live near that. And she said her entire family has to run their TVs and air conditioning at night just to block out the noise, just so they can sleep. And she's like a half mile away, and it's just nonstop.
So Gallup had numbers in May that said
Okay.
about 7 in 10 oppose, which is strong.
Yeah.
And it actually kind of mirrors all the other polling I've done, like on just anti-big business.
Mm.
So, like, we've gotten 85 roughly percent say that big tech needs to be reined in. Over 70% who think that corporations are like manipulating. Like, there's a massive anti-major corporation sentiment.
Yeah.
So it says the political breakdown is 3 and 4 Democrats, but it's more like 60% of Republicans. So that's enough to say it's like broadly bipartisan.
Yeah.
And that the difference is probably, Trump supports data centers, so I got to too,
Right.
Now, I don't think, like, if you stack ranked this would come anywhere close to the number one issue, which is just people can't afford to live.
No.
In
Yeah.
many ways. Yeah.
And here's my theory of the case, is that a lot of maybe not the AI data centers, because they directly affect people's day-to-day lives and, tanking their property values. But a lot of the other things, especially like immigration, things like that, I think if Trump was meeting people's financial needs, if he had done what he said and really worked on the economy as soon as he came in, and people were being able to afford homes and, live their lives and feed their families and pay their mortgage and rent, a lot of this other stuff, they would be like, yeah, I care, but like, am I really going to make a big deal out of it? My needs are being met. I'm fine. And it goes both ways. That happens on the left too. When people feel like their needs are being met, they ignore a lot of things. I think that's what, a lot of it right now, the dissatisfaction with the party, especially the quote unquote leaders on the left, is because Democratic voters were like, wait a minute, you guys said that you knew best. You told us that we needed to go for these middle of the road, centrist establishment Democrats, that they were the safe bet to beat Trump. And now you've lost to him twice. And they see everything, from the left's perspective, everything falling apart in the country, and scary and total shit. So, yeah, everybody's like, yeah, I don't really trust you anymore. So,
well, you guys look like you're having your own civil war too. And I think it's over basically the same issue, which is foreign and corporate influence. And the fact that we don't live in a capitalistic society. And this is something I'm going to write a book on it sometime in the next year. And I think it's important for me to tell a story to Republicans that they need to get smarter about capitalism and how to actually compete in the marketplace of ideas on this, because they're failing miserably. And I think, like, what we're seeing now is like, okay, voters thought they were going to get what they wanted out of Trump. 2 months from a midterm, everybody's on the right's realizing, no, like, he didn't. Right.
Yeah.
And so what you're seeing is what I think is part of a kleptocratic uniparty kabuki theater, which is they purposely pick divisive issues to redirect to who the enemy is. So it's like, well, it's not us, the establishment Republicans, that kept you from getting what you want, even though we had a mandate. It's those dirty Muslims, and they're taking over America, even though they're 1% of the country and they voted for Trump, like a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Or look at how scary the socialists. You could never collaborate with socialists. They're all socialists and they want to put you in the ditch. And there are some people on the left measurably is more violent. And I know why. It is. I've measured it.
I've looked at stats that definitely say otherwise.
Well, they're more afraid of the right than the right is of the left also. And I think a lot of that has to do with January 6th. But I'm just telling you, it's like you ask a Luigi Mangione question and women under 40 are like, yeah, okay, sure, he killed the guy. Like, it's like,
yeah, but he's not really on the left. I mean, if you look at his politics,
No, I'm not saying he's on the left. I'm saying the people that say his murder of that CEO was understandable are on the left.
I would argue that too, because when I did a segment on him, I got a lot of people on the right that started following me. And they were saying, I'm a Trump voter, I'm MAGA, but we need more Luigi's. Like,
I'm not trying to point fingers or
bipartisan.
No, I'm saying it was like 38% of women under 40, but like 18% of men under 40. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying only them. I'm just saying like that is where the tendency is. And people on the right will use that to divide everybody again, because also the Charlie Kirk thing. Okay. And I'm not pointing fingers again, because like the right uses it to the left uses it to the right. Look, they tried to overthrow democracy. Look, they killed Charlie Kirk. I'm just saying that those narratives are getting trotted out now, 2 months before election, in which the Republicans didn't deliver on their major promises. And in my opinion, these are coming from the establishment. And especially Republicans know they have a socialist problem. And what they're going to do is they're going to dig in and say, we can never be a socialist nation, and they're going to lose. And when I think we need to have a lot of nuance, and this is something I've been really trying to plead with the Republicans to get their head out of their butts, is that America is perceived by pretty much everybody to be at least somewhat capitalist. So they think we have capitalism. And I would argue we don't. And when you ask about, would you prefer socialism or capitalism, just the words, socialism now wins with people under 40, but it's not popular. It's like 40 couple percent.
Yeah.
And so there you get a lot of not sures because people don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Now, I think specifically the DSA are using it as a stand-in for progressive economics and populism, which I support, and that they're not really saying we want to be socialist. If they really want to be socialist, that would be a bad idea, because Americans like freedom and they just are going to. But if it's like, well, we should have better systems like Europe, it's like, okay, I agree with that. You know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't be torching this money.
Yeah, now, there is a tension there between, and like I'm very progressive. I consider myself to be a Bernie type progressive, but there are a lot of DSA policies that I 100% disagree with, as their stated policies of, let's get rid of prisons. No, like, I have a child.
National sovereignty, like, right. Like,
when you have a family member that's been a victim of a violent crime, no, you want prisons. I just don't believe in these private prison models with, like Geo Group, which, it's just vile and making money off of incarcerating people and, throwing people in who don't belong in there, who have never committed a crime. And so, I mean, we just need a better system. Just like, healthcare shouldn't be for profit. I don't think prisons should be for profit. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on all those things. And I think what is going to happen is, like, one of the other things that blows people's minds is that the under 40 voter who voted for Trump in 24 is also, in some measures, pretty socialistic, like 3/4 of them would nationalize a major industry, and 60% of them believe in excess wealth confiscation. So these people think the economic system has failed them, like 65-70%. And the right just doesn't get that. They had these people, they don't know why, and they lost them because they're still digging in on this trickle down Reaganomics kind of crap that turned into a corporate oligarchy. And so like I kind of, as I learn more about history and economics, like I kind of laugh about this, is that you see these conservatives harken back to the economic situation of the 50s, 60s, and 70s and say, well, I want that again, where a single income janitor can afford a house and all his kids and send them to college and stuff. It's like, okay, but like that came kind of from progressive economic policies, right? Like it came from strong unions and progressive tax systems.
Yeah, and following the New Deal and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, okay, like obviously some of it was World War II, like, right. But what I've been trying to frame it to the Republicans is like, basically you need to provide a clear-eyed, pragmatic explanation to voters, not why socialism is bad, because like, what does the word even mean? But what is your economic alternative? You have to provide an actual alternative that works, and they're wholly incapable of doing that. The think tanks don't do it because they're all like the Cato Institute. Trump can't do it because he's a big business oligarch. He's literally the guy with the monocle. And I told Susie Wallace to her face a year ago, I was like, listen, you're going to lose these people unless you smash the oligarchy. And like, she's like, oh, that's good, we should write it down. I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't act like an oligarch. You should smash them. And she wrote it down, and like, it's like Trump's inviting billionaires to build the ballroom. You know what I mean? So it's like, what I think is cool is that, so both establishment parties, in my opinion, are very rooted in the principles. Like they will say the word progressive, they will say the word capitalism, they'll say the word conservatism, and they've kind of lost all meaning. And most of these boomers that inherited the post-World War II political and economic order. And I ascribe to this theory of history called the fourth turning, in which I think we're seeing the cyclical nature of which society goes through a crisis, forms institutions, the institutions fall apart, and then society reorders around a new set of values. And I think we're seeing that right now because boomers are losing about net 3 or 4 million votes a year due to death and new people. And these young people don't care as much about socialism versus capitalism, conservative versus liberal.
Right.
They just want to be
they don't like labels, is what it seems like. They don't want to be known as a Republican or a Democrat. They just are like, let's all come together, figure out a better way. I just want to be able to live. I just want to be able to breathe and, afford the things that my parents were able to afford. So it's very foreign to older people in America. They're, well, what do you mean? They have to have been racist to vote for Trump. And I'm like, there are those people, like they're rearing their ugly heads right now with the whole, anti-Muslim rhetoric that I see online daily. But there also are a lot of people who voted for Trump who voted for Bernie, or they were too young to vote back then. And,
this is what's so beautiful. Like 90% of the people on the right are like, where did all this Muslim stuff come from all of a sudden? You know what I mean? It's like Laura Loomer, like that's where it came from. Like, so we have our people, and they're funny because all this is completely confounding the establishment right. So you see, because the Israel issue, Nick Fuentes is super toxic, right? Like you can't, and yet at the same time, they don't understand that it's like, okay, he does have his core followers, but then there's just like 20 or 30 million other people who have watched a show or two of his. Oh, he's got a good point. Or, oh yeah, I believe with Nick on this. Or they're not like avid followers. And like they call him super hard right. And he certainly said a bunch of racist stuff. Like I think a lot of it's probably shock job behavior, but he's kind of an economic socialist in some ways. And
he recently said, I'm actually kind of a moderate Democrat.
So what I think we're going to see is, I want to see it because I think it's better for America. Some form of economic populism with nationalism that happens with a younger generation who does who is forming institutions based on a new set of values, which again, I think is so important that that's what Tucker led off with. I don't care what you think about all the other stuff he does. It's hard to disagree with a lot of the things he says. And whether you do or not, it's like an olive branch. He's offering an olive branch to say, like, let's talk about what America means and what we should be as Americans, because then we can know that maybe we shouldn't defund the police, right? Because we believe that society should have laws. And those are the things that I think the right and the left both need in order to get rid of the regressive parts that I think are being driven by the establishment. And like, I'll give you another perfect example. It's like, again, with bombing the Middle East. Okay. So it's like, if you're a Christian conservative, then you think that Americans have natural rights that come from God, which means that humans have natural rights that come from God, which mean that Iranians have natural rights that come from God. And you can't dismiss them as Islamists because they're made in the image of God, and you're supposed to want to convert them to Christianity. Well, is nuking Tehran the best way to do that? And a lot of these people would say, yeah, we got to make sure they don't get a nuke. And if we have to kill 100 million of them, like, what?
All the pro-lifers.
I would love to get rid of that part of the right, and because it's psychotic. And like, I hope there's a place where we can all acknowledge the psychotic parts. And like, and again, like this pugilistic, like culture war clash, I think again, a lot of it was driven by foreign and corporate interests, by establishment parties to misdirect people. But it's like, there's an aspect on the right where it's like, I just don't want to hear about the LGBT. Like, let's get over it. But at the same time, like, let's not do this stuff to our children, right? And so it's like, there's an opportunity for us to solve these problems. Same thing where it's like, if you took late-term abortion and just like, believe it or not, it's over, I think it was over 70% that would be okay with just abortions 1 trimester and sooner. But like, let's just start at the last one and say, okay, if we had good faith carve-outs and most of America is against this, only 20% are for it. You know, like, so I think on all these issues, there is common ground.
Yeah.
If it wasn't,
and I think that's another big misconception. Like I was talking about the 2A rights and things like that, and, you know, the border. I think a lot of people, and I still see this on Twitter, you know, from MAGA followers or even just America Firsters who have ditched Trump. And they have this misconception of, oh, you know, everybody on the left wants late-term abortion. And it's, you know, I think it's so twisted because we on the left, like, I am 100% for a woman's right to choose. Although when I had the choice to make as an 18-year-old, I couldn't do it. I chose to have my child. Okay. It just, you know, but any other woman, I have family members who have been victimized, you know, violently raped. 100% you should be able to do, you know, with your body what you want, especially after being violated in that way and having someone take something from you. What we on the left, and I would say the vast majority, I'm sure there's some crazy people, some fringe crazy people who don't agree with this, but the vast majority, every leftist I've ever spoken to is like, yeah, I just think that you should be able to have a late term DNC if you're, you know, if the child is going to die and they know, like, there's no chance this child is going to live, or if it's in a danger to the mother's life, to save her life. But most people in America would say, no, absolutely not. After, you know, like maybe the 5th month, 4th month, 5th month, you know, it shouldn't be just a choice. Just, and that's the thing too. No woman is carrying a baby for 8 months and then going, you know what? I kind of changed my mind. Like, it just isn't happening, right?
So the polling on abortion shows that America is pretty freaking reasonable. And yet there are some people that want none, and there are some people that want completely unfettered abortion, blah, blah, blah. They are both fringe majorities at this point in time. 100% fringe majorities.
Yeah.
The problem becomes when you have a Democrat establishment who pretty ubiquitously supports completely unfettered abortions, and when you have a Republican establishment who will just play the opposite side. And it's like neither of those positions are in the Overton window. And when that happens, as it does on many issues, it's clearly just a division tactic in order to maintain establishment status quo. Now, personally, I'm an anti-abortion guy. I don't like it. And personally, like, that's how I would carry myself. Yet at the same point in time, I understand that position is not in the Overton window, nor is it an adequate political reason to completely, like, check out of the country, like, not have a conversation on how we move the ball downfield on the issues that really matter at this point in time, right? And so that's what I would love for Americans to realize, like, what we should be doing, which is like, let's agree what our main problem is. The economy is not suiting the people, and anything moving us away from that focus at this point, because this is our existential problem. We are about to run out of money. It's all going to get really bad. The corporate, like, we're like one step away from corporate fascism, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like
I think we're already there.
yeah, okay, right, 100%. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like at this point in 20 years, we'll be fighting wars like for Amazon. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, the biggest welfare queens in the country are like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. I mean, you know,
well, I said this on Twitter. I said, if you're voting,
wealthy,
if you're voting,
living, you know, and how much of our tax dollars are going to them?
Yeah,
it's like, fund your own freaking company. If I started a company, you know, is the government just going to hand me billions of dollars?
Well, they're in protected monopolies, and the entire financial system of, like, printing more dollars and asset prices going up, like, all of it, the way they can get, like, unlimited debt, and the way that they can use all of these pro-globalist policies in order to suppress like labor, the cost of labor. And so I've said that if you're voting for Republicans, you're voting literally for welfare. It's socialism for the rich, the corporations, and Israel. If you're voting for Democrats, they're at least saying that it's socialism for the poor. And so, like, what do you think's going to win in that scenario? And the right has no answer to that. You know, like, they just don't know. So
yeah, the New Republic just wrote an article. I didn't read the whole thing, but they had this great line in it that said, like, if socialism scares you, if that's not something you want, then make capitalism better.
I said that too. I never thought it. I think New Republic did a hit piece on Rasmussen, by the way. I'm pretty sure they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Susie Wiles's email got hacked. And so we had sent her polls, and our owner was on, like, in the email chains of, like, sending Susie Wiles polls. It's like, I'll send polls to whoever they want, you know, like, just like, you know, AOC, give me your email. I'll send you polls. You know, I don't care. But here we are agreeing on the current state of our capitalistic system. Capitalism sucks right now. It needs to be better.
Yeah, I love, like, I think I just responded yesterday to, I think it was Tom Cotton, who said something about, you know, or actually their new thing is they're not even going with socialism anymore. They've realized, I think, that socialism isn't the scary term that that it used to be. So now it's communism, and it's like, you know, come on, like, we're talking about apples and oranges almost. I mean, you know, and there's three different things. I mean, democratic socialism is not socialism, and socialism is definitely not communism. I mean, those are three totally different points of view and you know, economic policies and theories. But yeah, I mean, they're just going with the most scary term, which is now their communism. So I think he said something about, you know, oh, communism never works, and all it does is, you know, cause misery and suffering, and, you know, people to struggle. And it's like, and I responded, I'm like, oh, as opposed to the misery and struggling we have now under capitalism. I mean, thank you for making the case for changing our country's economic system.
What do you think will happen first? Do you think Republicans will acknowledge that what we have isn't real capitalism? Or do you think that Democrats would just come out and acknowledge that they don't want to put people in a ditch? You know what I mean? It's like somebody's going to get there first. You know what I mean? It's like this is
Yeah,
literally all that's standing between us. I
yeah.
mean, because
I mean,
again, the
but we've
corporations are the
we've got
enemy
our
here.
own. Yeah, I just did a. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
did a video last night, or published it last night, about Hakeem Jeffries on. I think it was Meet the Press, saying, "Oh no, I'm not for Medicare for all. I'm not for a single payer system." It's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to destroy our chances in the midterms? I mean, do you not see the polling? Do you not know that this is where the majority of Americans are? And you can call it whatever you want. And
Yeah.
I wish Bernie had called it something else, because older Americans are like, oh, well, I still have to pay a certain amount of money for Medicare. So it's not the same thing. I wish people understood that Medicare for all is, no, you wouldn't be paying anything. You'd just be paying your taxes. Um,
So
but
yeah,
yeah,
I personally believe our healthcare industry is failed. And the
mhm,
reason I believe that is because it's about 20% of our GDP, and most of it, not all, but most of it is funded by the government, which means it's one of our biggest tax burdens, and we're running out of money. And I wish the Republicans had an answer to it, but their answer is just to give you more HSAs because
yeah,
they're funded by pharma, they're funded by these healthcare systems, and they don't care. They don't mind. Those people have wealth and power and will continue to back Republicans. At the same time, like I'm less personally opposed to the idea of government sponsored healthcare than I might have previously been in my past, but I don't think the government can necessarily fix this. This meaning we spend a lot of money and most of it's just all waste, right? In my opinion. And so like we're stuck in a situation where I do think it needs free market competition in order to drive down the cost of healthcare for everybody. And yet neither side's going to bring us there. Like they just can't. Like the Democrats want, I guess, want it to be single payer and it will just eat our treasury. And the Republicans want it to stay the way it is and it will just eat our treasury. So it's like you're in the situation where
mhm,
like they don't need a 4-to-1 administrator like ratio, right? Like we don't need to be spending $100,000 like 5 times a week for oncology scans for somebody that's got a and I hate to be the guy that says that, but like we are like these are rent seeking corporations that get their way from both parties, and what they want is to just charge whatever. And like 20%, like this is what's wild. If like I hope I got the numbers right, and I did this with AI, but it was like a year ago.
mhm,
If we had taken when we put in Medicare and Medicaid, if we had taken it and capped it at a percent of I think I used 5% of GDP. At the time, I think we were spending like 3% on healthcare. And these numbers are directionally correct if I forget them. But it's like if you
mhm.
take those two programs and just cap them as a percent of GDP and said, you know what, like fine, pay for everybody's healthcare, just cap them at a percent of GDP. I think I came up with our debt would be 20 instead of 40 trillion right now. So it's like this is one of the reasons that the wheels are falling off. Like it shouldn't be the biggest employer in 40 out of 50 of our states. And
Yeah, I just think we need to take the profit motive out, and I have extended family in Japan, and it's like I look at their healthcare system. It's phenomenal. Like it is unbelievably good. They don't pay anything. And everybody's like, "Oh, they pay more in taxes." I'm like, "Okay, well, right now I'm paying $2,000 a month for health insurance for my husband and I. And we don't even have like the best. We still have a huge deductible, huge copay that we have to
yeah,
meet. So it's like my taxes aren't going to be $2,000 more. So there's a way to do it, and it can be better than it is. And one thing is, how about we just tax billionaires and the wealthy at the rate that they're supposed to be taxed at, get rid of all these loopholes that they use, and actually have them pay what they're supposed to pay, instead of paying less than a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer. And people go, oh, do you know how much they pay? Well, yeah, as a percentage of their income, though, as a percentage of the money that they're making, while they're also grifting off of us, off of our tax dollars by getting all of these contracts from the government and doing what? Blowing up spaceships?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I think there's a significant and egregious amount of waste in the healthcare system. And you could pick almost anything. Like, for instance, I had sleep apnea and I went
mm,
to, and they're like, oh, you need to have a CPAP for the rest of your life. I'm
ugh,
like, really? I'm kind of a skinny guy. Like, can we just, and then I went to a
mm,
specialist and they're like, well, we'll give you a $30,000 surgery that's got like a 20% success rate. I'm like, no.
Jesus.
But like, my point is that like when I am identified as somebody with a sleep apnea,
Mhm.
whether it's single payer or not, it will be perceived as a 4 million end of life revenue stream, right? And it's like I haven't seen a good plan about how to take the profit motive out. Let me just put it that way, right?
Yeah.
And so what I just did was got a pulse oximeter and learned to sleep on my side, and now I don't have sleep apnea.
Mm,
So it's like how many billions a year?
yeah.
Yeah, and I would look at Japan and I say, like, am I going to say, no, that's socialist, we should never do that? It's like, no, let's look objectively at why it succeeds over there.
Yeah.
And I think the number one conclusion you're going to make is that they're nationalistic, which is all the more reason why I think that we need a true national populist platform, because we need to get rid of this idea that the profit motive comes before this contract that we all have with each other in the Constitution, right? Like, this is what we're here to, like, try and make work. And
Mhm.
right now, like, the idea of just globalizing everything means like you have all these people that just find themselves not beholden to that. And we have like Teddy Roosevelt on Mount Rushmore for a reason, because these are not new problems. Like, they were dealing with things like this. And he talked quite openly about taxing the hell out of all these rich people. He would
Mhm.
very openly, and he
Yeah.
supported progressive tax policies. And he's one of the reasons that we have the Great Compression, which everybody agrees is like pretty fundamental in the American dream. So, but like, again, I've every right wing person that just listened to me just called me a socialist and eat out of your show, right? So it's
That's okay. I'm sure everybody who heard me talk about 2A rights and stuff is, calling me secretly MAGA.
no, I mean, the
So,
2A is a pretty important thing, and you know why? Because we don't want state authority here, like, and it's
yeah.
the only reason we have the only way to prevent that.
Yeah, what I
Um,
tell people is, yeah, you may be all for taking away guns during a Biden administration, but do you really want to not have any way to protect yourself under the Trump administration, or what may come next? Like, and a lot of people will go, yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, you don't know how bad things can get and how far it can go. So, yeah.
I think it's pretty safe to say that nobody's going to be storming your house in the Trump administration now. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe, like, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, they,
It
even if
wouldn't
they
be
wanted to, they'd
wise.
like
It wouldn't be wise.
screw it up
My
somehow.
Yeah, yeah, my husband could be a sharpshooter. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh,
I think
boy.
he's going to be, I think history is not going to treat him well. And I think mostly he has himself to blame. And it all was so avoidable. But this is just like one more in a long line of people on the right who, like, people have invested hope in and just been totally betrayed. Like the
Mhm.
Tea Party, same thing kind of happened with Paul Ryan and the establishment guys. And now here you have another one with a populist outsider who got captured by the system. I think we can all agree to some extent.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, in my opinion, better thought leadership on the right. And I just look around and it's like I don't see where that comes from. Like, the current people that get all
Mm,
the money from the Koch brothers, it's not. It's just on how
yeah,
can we screw them out of, how can we squeeze amnesty out of the dying embers of this movement? And you know what I mean? Like, and they're pushing
yeah.
that stuff. So
Yeah, that's why I question whether or not JD Vance even has a shot in 2032. I mean, you've got, I don't know if you saw this music video. It was generated by AI, but it was really good, really well done, called Donald Trump is a Bitch, I think. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'll
I'm sure I can
send you
find
the
it.
link.
Yeah,
I'll shoot you the link in an email. But yeah, it was really well done. And two Trump voters who just feel completely betrayed. I mean, everything in it is about, the Epstein files. And the very last bit of it is never going to fall for this again. And they flash a picture of JD Vance. So, and these guys are not Democrats. Like they slam the Democrats throughout it, and all kinds of stuff about Hillary, and so
yeah. It's so hard to
yeah.
know too, because that could have been funded by Hasbara just to get Rubio in office. You know what I mean? Like it's such a mess on the right now, because
Yeah,
you have
these
Chris
guys actually
Pasagita
have a
PACs.
podcast. The two guys who made it, they actually have a podcast, and
All
they're
right,
they're
cool.
independents, and
Okay, good. All right.
yeah.
I would say, like, he's got the toughest job in the world right now. He has to
Mhm.
simultaneously support Trump and distance himself from Trump.
Yep.
And he's surrounded by people who don't want him there. And even if he were to have a shot in 28, like, trust me, this time I mean it, is not like the right platform to run on. And not only
Mhm.
that, is that none of the funding is going to want him either. And so he has to build a new pipeline of funding and infrastructure. And I think he's a builder. I think he can do that, but I don't know if he could do that without relying on people like Peter Thiel. And then that's going
Mhm.
to piss off other people, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
can he come back in 32? Yeah, I think it's possible. Again, he's the only person that I know of currently on the right who actually says the correct things to win. And I think he means it. But again, like, you don't know what the
Yeah.
system does to people. The system seems to chew up everybody.
Yeah.
And so what I think is most likely on the right is that there'll be some kind of outsider who runs as a spoiler and just makes the Republicans lose even more. And they would have nobody but themselves to blame, because this was also predictable.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I think he's going to have a tough time. I mean, you even have people like, I don't know if you ever have watched Breaking Points with Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. So Crystal is a progressive like me. Sagar is a Trump voter, or was a Trump supporter. Actually knows JD Vance and was a huge supporter of his. And even he more recently is like, yeah, I don't know if he ever believed the things that he said. He just is such a huge disappointment, and
He
it,
does. I
yeah,
think he really does. Again, he was one of the few people who was trying to stop this Iran thing.
mhm.
And like, I think that's a litmus test. You know what I mean? It's like, his judgment is better than most people that Trump was surrounded with. And he was doing it, in his opinion, to help America. And that's just so rare, because every single person I know on the right would put, like, donor interest first. So
Yeah, I mean, from
yeah.
the left's perspective, we all think he's full of shit. We all think that he is just a, power hungry, power seeking grifter who will say or do anything to get ahead. I mean, look at the whole, when he was confronted about the whole, the Haitians are eating dogs and cats. And and he admitted on camera, he's like, yeah, well, we know, basically admitted he knows it's not true, but he's going to say whatever he has to say to bring attention to the area. And it's like, really? Like, seriously, you're going to put a target on, like, my best friends are Haitian. I'm friends with their entire family. They're like my family. So for me, I'm like, fuck you. Like, go fuck yourself every day of the week and twice on Sunday, because you just put a target on their back. But personally, I will never trust him, would never support him. I don't care what kind of message comes out of his mouth. Like, even if he said, I am now a progressive leftist and want everything that they want, I'd be like, no. Like, you get one chance with me. Like, if you blow it and I no longer trust you, we're done. We're done. So
Yeah.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
can't counter signal his boss a week before the election. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem. And I think any Democrat in the same position on something like that would be. So again, like, I'll wait and see.
This is why I'll never be a politician, because I would be like, no, this is what I said and this is what I meant, and I don't care who you are and what you meant to me, or that you're in charge. Like I just
Yeah.
I
No, I
couldn't.
don't have that skill either. And like Trump's actually used to be like pretty good at this. Where like the abortion issue, they tried to shoot him in the face with it. DeSantis did, and he was just like, "No, we're not going to talk about that." You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
that worked for him at the time, right? But like, the one thing I could say, like, JD was raised poor. I honestly believe, based on things he told me to my face, that he is the only Republican who's an economic populist, like currently in the party. And like, that's the winning formula. And he also, what he has, in my opinion, that Trump lacks is that, like first off, I think there are aspects of pragmatism to him where he will avoid or shift or whatever. I don't know if that's necessarily bad or not, as long as the core values are there. But what I will say is, I think, unlike Trump, he's a builder, meaning that he understands how corporate systems work. He understands incentive alignment. He understands surrounding himself with the right people. And so he could be effective in building something that eats the right in the correct way. But that's such like a long shot chance based on how the establishment right works, that I don't even know if that's possible. But again, like, no coattails. Like, I don't think he's going to have any coattails. And so it's probably a moot point to talk about at this point. Like, I hope he goes into some type of thought leadership position where the right develops a new sensibility about how to fix capitalism. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, in times like this, when you see like the war, everything going to shit, where true leadership shows up is in moments like this, where you go, you know what? I know I'm supposed to do the party line, but I got to call it out. I got to call this shit out, and I've got to do the right thing and step up and try to save the country. And I don't know. I just,
well, I'll give you a different example. Like, he should have come out and resigned over Iran.
Yeah. Or the Epstein files.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Joe Kent, but I give him a lot of credit for that, for resigning. And it's sad that he's the only one. It's very telling and very pathetic that he's the only one. I don't know.
I agree.
In life, I just believe, like, you always do the right thing. You always tell the truth. You always do the right thing. Even if it costs you personally, it's always the right thing to do. You stand by your morals and your principles, and you say what you mean and you mean what you say. And I don't know. I guess maybe I'm from like a bygone era, like I'm reincarnated or something. Like, I have this argument with people on the left too, there's like, oh, nobody cares about, affairs anymore. It's like, but we should.
We should. Yeah.
All that does is it slowly erodes the presidency or any public office. Like, we should care about these things. Like, you should be able to look at the person who is the most powerful in the country and go, this is a person who keeps their word. This is a person who is honest and has fidelity in all areas of their life. Because, we've always had this saying in our house of how you do anything is how you do everything. And I live by that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like
this is a challenge. Like, we're headed towards the fourth turning crisis, and it's impossible to predict what that is, but it will probably be messy in some way. And there will be a shift where people become, out of necessity, more cohesive and collaborative, and they'll bury their hatchets. And I think part of that is that people need to be more open about what they believe and what they stand for. And I think he's been more open than most. But at the same time, you got to acknowledge that, like, A, these people are politicians. I get it. But like, B, no matter what happens, even if he was perfect, there's always going to be something that can be used by dividers to undermine any coalition. And it might not even be something he said. It could be something that somebody supported him said. It could be, look at all those people on the right. Like, they want to they're racist. Look at all those people on the left, they want to kill you. And it's like objectively, the answer is like no, right? So, and I think that, like, I hope it doesn't get to where we're all in bread lines to figure out that we need to come together in that way. And I'm certainly not a political leader. I mean, I'll tell people like what I think the measurement says that people think. And like what I was very optimistic about, again, is people on the right are trying to cancel Tucker Carlson right now. They say that he's funded by Qatar, even though the president's flying around on a freaking jet from Qatar.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to do the right thing and bring political discourse to a higher level. So we like, it's a reset is what it is. And what I was very optimistic to see, and I don't know what you think about them, is that the way in which the Young Turks started covering that, I was pretty, I was like, oh, look at that. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's hope for the world. Because the
problem is the Young Turks have kind of fallen out of favor with a lot on the left. I mean, I see this in my own comment section anytime I say anything about Cenk or Anna or bring up the Young Turks. Even anybody who's adjacent to TYT, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't trust them anymore because they, started to align too much with MAGA figures. And even though they've, kind of walked back some of it and said, yeah, I was wrong to trust too many people. I thought that the Epstein files would be a red line, and it wasn't for a lot of these people. I thought that the war would be a red line. It wasn't. And, they're starting to kind of rethink some of it and realize, like I was saying, there's MAGA and then there's America First, and they're not the same. But I think a lot of leftists stopped watching them when they started to align too much with MAGA figures and speaking at MAGA events. And so, they haven't heard their evolution. They haven't seen it. So unfortunately, we
have our dividers on both sides. And
or people who will just see a short clip of someone and then assume they know everything about them and they know what they stand for and who they are. I mean, I have people do that with me. They'll see one video that I make and maybe it has something negative in there about Nancy Pelosi or, establishment Democrats. Like, oh, you must be a Trump supporter. You must be MAGA. Like, you must be new here because nothing could be further from the truth. So, yeah, it happens.
Let me give you an encouraging data point. You're going to love this. Okay. Very encouraging data point. On July 10th of 2025, we went into the field with a question, which is closer to your opinion that the Epstein case is now closed or that there are dozens of powerful and wealthy offenders who need to face justice? Among Republicans, only 20% said the case is closed. 66% said there are dozens of powerful and wealthy offenders who need to face justice. So what you see online does not reflect the right at large. And why is that? It's because there was a lot of BB bucks going around, and there was a lot of people that make money off of Trump shilling for this guy and trying to say that, like, don't believe your eyes and ears. Trump, we must trust Trump. And it's like, meanwhile, on the right, they're like, what the hell? Like, no. And then he attacked his followers. So, like, and if like, that's one in the right. Like, they got rid of one of the best people in Congress, Thomas Massey, over this whole thing. They spent all this AIPAC money to take him out. So, we have more in common.
I know. I've seen it in the focus groups. I've heard it. I've seen it in other polling. So it's definite. Epstein was definitely a bipartisan issue. This war is definitely a bipartisan issue. The economy. So that is why I keep, people on the right on Twitter, especially, the midterms, you guys are smoking crack and, polling is all fake. And I'm like, all right, well, have fun in the midterms then, because you do not know what you're talking about.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that. The Democrat primaries to me looked like you basically had your establishment candidates trying to take out up and coming DSA people. And when you have Syed underperform the polls by 9 points, it's true that primary polls are tough, but like usually that doesn't happen when he wasn't the establishment person, like he was too big to win, too big to rig, in my opinion, is basically what happened. They probably tried to cook the numbers in Detroit or whatever. And then you had the other one. What's the name off the top of my head? Crawley.
Oh, yeah, over in yeah, I know who you're talking about.
It was like a 20-point polling miss. You know
Yeah,
what I
with
mean? It's
Francesca
like,
Hong.
yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, you're seeing this on both sides, that you have these establishment people who have some differences, like the establishment Democrats want to blow up Russia, the establishment Republicans want to blow up the Middle East. And at the same time, they're both corporate welfare people that have their patrons. And I think they still want to stay in power. They're very much in power. They control all the funding mechanisms. And they're trying to tamp down, like, fundamentally economic populist things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what would be great is if those economic populist movements were more nationalistic, because I think that's what it takes. It's like the layers that you have of, like, okay, well, like, we believe in natural rights. Second Amendment has a purpose. National sovereignty is important. And I think on the right, they could do better by saying, okay, like, there needs to be fairness, right? Like, these are the things that Tucker is talking about at the same point. Like, I don't want, like, again, like, for instance, the race thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've had some benefits because of my race. Sure. And yes, there were bad times in America's past. At this moment, like, I will 10-to-1 be racially discriminated against in the corporate workplace. I don't want some kind of, like, special victim status. I want to get back to what I thought we had in the 80s or 90s, which is like I watched a show with the black guy and it was cool. And I had friends that were multiracial, right? I feel like there's this aspect of recent division that continues to prey on these things. And that's one of the cultural war issues that's been a wedge. LGBT stuff, like the race stuff. And it's like, on this, I'm sure you guys have your stuff that the right does that's retarded too, right? And it's like, these are the things that have been the tool of the establishment that somehow we have to come to some type of way to get past them, right? And it's like running on reparations is not the right way. Like, I'm just saying, like, objectively, it's not the right way. But, like, what is, right? You know what I mean? Like, can we just ignore that, or can we? Like, I don't know, but the coalition has to work through these kind of things, when fundamentally, in my opinion, there are socially economic depressed minorities, especially in inner cities. Like, this is a problem we have to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Funding hasn't solved it, but in my opinion, the wide availability of economically viable job opportunities could. Like, I do think there's an aspect of pull, where if we had real capitalism, where these people were invited into the way they've always had jobs until NAFTA and globalism, right? You know what I mean? Like, these are the problems that have been driving us apart. And I don't think we need to obsess.
Monopolies too. I mean, we
100%.
have to crack down on monopolies. I mean, Amazon just destroyed so many companies, so many businesses.
The political will exists. And Trump even had a very anti-monopoly DOJ person in, and Republican scumbags ran her out of office. So, yeah, 100%.
I mean, Biden's person was, I mean, she was a Bernie aligned person. She was
good
awesome.
too. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That probably made a bunch of other MAGA people tune out. But it's like, yeah, Lena Khan, I think her name was. Yeah. Steve Bannon supported her.
And she's, and she's a brown woman. So that's also going to get the right riled up. So
meritocracy is part of nationalism, in my opinion. And it's like, there are just things that are American that Americans want back. And we are robbed of them from our leaders because, again, of the two-party kabuki system that is subjugating everybody. And it's only a matter of time till it gets unwound. And I think it's going to happen by necessity. And I just hope it doesn't take like Social Security going under and all of this other stuff that's coming in the next 10 years or less.
Yeah. Why we can't raise the cap to expand Social Security, to fund Social Security. I mean, it is insane that a person making, what is it, 174.8 or something, 174,000 roughly, you're paying Social Security tax on your entire income, but yet someone who makes more than that is not. It's like,
Yeah.
how is that fair? How is that fair? And I saw this in real time being explained to people in a focus group. And it's so funny because depending on how you explain it to them, they're either for it or against it. So
Yeah.
it was so bizarre to see, like, and luckily the man running it, the moderator, understood that people weren't getting it because they were all against it at first. And then when he explained it in that way, like, hey, if you're making $50,000 a year, you're paying every dollar of your income has Social Security tax imposed on it. Somebody who's making $200,000 a year does not. They anything over and above that 174.8 or whatever it is, they don't have to pay Social Security tax. And when he explained it in that way, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's not fair." It's like
It's a
a light
regressive
bulb went off.
tax. It it's a regressive tax.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
and like I think there's a case to be made for progressive taxes. 100%. It's worked for us in the past, and
yeah.
yet we have Trump's like, oh, capital gains. And so this is what I'm saying. Like on the right, no money is going to go towards making them smarter about. You got the Cato Institute, and they want wide open borders, right? So like you have
Mhm.
Americans for Prosperity, and they just like they make any person that wants the AFP money or the Club for Growth money come and do a humiliation ritual where they say, you know, about how globalism's great and we need completely free markets and all this other stuff, things that have not been good for America objectively, and things that have been like like clearly the 1990 Immigration Act has not helped America. And that was signed by a Republican president, right? So but like what I'm saying is they're so far from being able to ideologically identify these problems and form them into a coherent policy set that we need a little help. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to get
Yeah.
over that hump. Like it's looking really grim. And again, that's why JD has been such a breath of fresh air, because he's the only one really that acknowledges these things. And what's happening now is that they're just completely a circular firing squad to kill this coalition and all the energy it had that was supposed to be populist. And
Yeah.
what really, if they're smart, the Democrats would run on the Trump agenda, a sane Trump agenda that stripped out all the divisive politics and just said, okay,
Mhm.
like, nice try, Republicans, but we really mean it. And like, I guess you see
Mhm.
people like Ossoff kind of trying to do that. I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't know. He's a little more centristy. I think all of the Democrats are trying to use more of the populist economic messaging and verbiage now because they see that's where everything is moving. Um, Kamala was initially like her initial message. I don't know if you heard about all of this, but we on the left definitely did. Initially, she had a very populist economic message, and they did some focus group testing on it, and 100% of the people in these focus groups said, "Yeah, I love that." And then she had, like, her brother-in-law, who I think he works with, is it Uber or one of those big companies? He comes in, other all these consultants come in, they're, "Oh, no, we can't do this." Why? Because they're protecting corporate interests. And so they totally shifted her message, and then it became this moderate, "Oh, I'm gonna go campaign with Liz Cheney, and I'm gonna, move to the center and talk about how I own a gun," and then, "Oh, I'm not gonna go on Rogan," which I have mixed feelings about that because I think she would have done horribly on Rogan because she is not someone who could just sit and talk the way we have and shoot the shit for
yeah,
hours. Um, she definitely is, somebody who has to stay on message and only stick to her script and that. But
yeah,
yeah, it totally blew it.
yeah.
Totally and completely.
The donors need their pound of flesh. I guess the way you'll know if somebody means it is that their primary position will be anti-monopoly, right?
Yeah.
And they will probably be the most hated politician to ever come along, but maybe the people will love him. You know, we had, like I said, we had these problems before in like the 1880s and 90s. There were like #1 hit songs that were anti-monopoly songs. And like, you know what I mean? It wasn't this like right left thing. It was,
Mm.
so I don't know. I guess we'll rediscover all that stuff. I think it's fair to say that this is kind of like a gilded age for sure. Certainly not a golden
Oh,
age.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In some ways worse, I think. I mean, the money that we have in politics, to me, is just that's the core evil. That is the #1 thing that has to change. We need to get rid of Citizens United, overturn that. And, you know, and now, I mean, the Supreme Court showed, oh, well, you know, we can overturn decisions that they make because they just did it. So
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
100%.
yeah. So anyway, well, I think we ran the gamut on
Yeah.
topics.
Fun talk.
There's something for everybody in this video. But I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you reaching out and coming on. And I should ask you too, how did you see my video?
The algorithm.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just like, here you
that's
go,
fun.
Mark. You're gonna want to watch this one. I'm like, oh, it's about me. Like, you know what I mean?
That's too
So,
funny.
yeah. Well, like a lot of people haven't really picked up on the whole like I'm not part of Rasmussen yet. They just know that I was like sort of put in a box and went away. But like Rasmussen does not currently. They have not announced a replacement pollster,
Oh,
and they're
wow.
still putting out daily numbers. So like I can only surmise that it's still the VA in the Philippines and the
Oh,
website
wow.
girl who are, you know, like it's just so wild.
Wow. Wow.
Ye-
So really
yeah.
accurate, you're saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I can say too, like I hadn't messed with the weighting since the 2024 election, and that really needs to happen because a midterm the turnout's just not going to look like 24. It's just going to be different. And they haven't made that change yet. And so they're probably still really they're probably at this point heavily favoring Republicans more than they should. And they put it like this was a period where I was greasing the skids to leave, but our last generic ballot was D+4. I don't think that's right. I think it's probably D+6 or 7. And again, I think it's just like history tells us the Democrats are going to pick up seats.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the MAGA agenda, period. Like Trump really can't do a heck of a lot, and everybody's going to start treating him like a lame duck and looking forward to the future. And we're all still going to be stuck in Iran probably. So that's it. And so they're already starting to like, that's what, in my opinion, all the stuff you're seeing on the right is. They're preemptively trying to put a stake in the ground of what they want the Republican Party to be. And at this point in time, that means very hostile to communists, very racist against Muslims, totally 100%. This is capitalism and it's great, guys. Trump didn't betray the American people. You betrayed Israel. You know, like that's what the Republican Party is going to stand for, I guess. So,
yeah. And in my opinion, you might get your wish because looking at Trump's health, I don't think he's going to make it through 4 years. I really don't. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but it's I look at the bruises on his hands. He had that weird scabies thing going on his neck. You know, his brain is not functioning properly. I mean, he's looking really bad.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of those pictures. I think he'll lose interest first.
Yeah, I think he already has. With his ADD, which is, you know, well documented. I think I don't think he can focus on much of anything for too long.
Yeah, he's not looking forward to the daily Iran brief.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even in his first term, I mean, they talked about how they basically had to give him like, you know, 1-page summations in big font with a lot of pictures and colors and
that's it. Like he's a construction business guy. You know what I mean? Like high level, you know what I mean? Like what I hope you can acknowledge is that I'm not asking you to excuse his behavior, but what I'm asking is like, can we agree that he had some skill in Twitter, meaning acknowledging what people are talking about, making the right decision and then learning from the feedback loop?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was
I
his.
I literally just said that yesterday in a video. I just said yesterday that he's lost his populist mojo that he used to have, and I said, whether you like him or not, whatever you think of him, he used to have his finger on the pulse. He used to understand what, and I used to work with a guy like this. My husband and I had a business partner that was like Trump Jr. Like, they are very in tune with what people want to hear and how to manipulate them through their messaging to draw them in, make them feel like they're the most special person in the world. And I totally get it. I totally understand you. And, the thing that you want to believe about yourself is what I believe in you too. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
he was good. He was really good at pretending to empathize with people's needs and wants
He's
and
not
and
like, you lost me there. He's not a very empathetic person, in my
no, I
opinion.
said pretending.
Well, I don't even think he tried that. It was more like I think a lot of early MAGA people would say, when they, like, really what made up their mind was when he got on that debate stage and just excoriated all of the neoconservative Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we are, having come full circle with him not even realizing that he just got on the wrong side of that. Right. So
Yeah,
it's
he
like,
became one of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it happened after he got off Twitter. And I said to him, I'm like, I don't know what you do, JD. You got to get this guy back on Twitter. Like,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have had
Totally
it
out of
anymore.
touch.
But yeah,
I'm sure you've seen it, and I've talked about it on my show, that his Truth Social feed is so very obviously, I don't know if it's AI generated, but it looks like just a bunch of automated slop.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes the
Slop.
responses don't even match his post. Like, he'll post about, I don't know, Kamala Harris, and the responses are a bunch of, "Oh, yeah, immigration this and the border that," and totally
Yeah.
off topic, and it's just like, I don't know if somebody in the administration is saying, "Look, we need to, like, keep him happy," and this is almost like a virtual binky
Like
that they're
Gorilla
putting in
TV.
his mouth, like, you know? And they just somehow created like a bot farm or AI stream that just fills his comment section with this obvious fake praise.
Do you
It's
remember Gorilla TV, the Gorilla channel?
mm-mm.
It's so funny because there was I forget if it was a book quote or somebody, and it was one of these books that, quite frankly, was probably mostly made up about, like, oh, dishing on Trump's inner circle. But there was this story about how Trump, like, wanted to watch gorillas fighting, and so somebody made, like, a fake gorilla channel. No, and there weren't fights, and Trump was like, "Oh, this is boring. Why aren't the gorillas fighting each other?" or something like that.
My God.
And this was memed because it was hilarious, because the idea, it's like, okay, like, it's directionally funny, but it's so absurd that it's, like, clearly not true. But
I cannot believe it. I can't believe I never heard that.
you should
That
look
is
it up.
hysterical.
It's a real thing. It's funny. I think it's from 2017 or 18, but
Oh, that's so sad. Oh my God.
no, I
So-
mean, like, True Social is not going to be around, I don't think, much longer. I think the insider trading thing they did was like a last ditch effort to stay above water or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I've been tracking the DJT stock since the inception. And I mean, it's down, it's been in single digits for months with like very few exceptions. Maybe a couple of days it popped up back into the $10 range. But it started off at, I think it was trading at the highest at almost $90 a share at one point, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. And now, yeah, it's down in the 7s and 8s. And yeah, that too, I have a lot of Trump supporters that would find my videos or come into my feed and, you don't know what you're talking about. I invested and I'm going to be wealthy and you're going to be crying over it. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't base a stock price on a man and his personality and expect it to do well, especially somebody so divisive. So,
Well,
it has to have a
yeah.
product behind it or service that's actually working.
Yeah, echo chambers don't sell well.
Yeah.
And history tells us that all presidents lose influence. And I remember I was there, like in the Trump movement before I was a pollster, when I remember people exuberantly posting about how they bought in at 60, 70, $80.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I like all this stuff is predictable. MAGA was always going to lose influence unless it became something structural, and it just has not. Trump's
Yeah.
endorsing establishment people up and down. There has been no change to the DC, like the way it operates. So it's like, great, you got Joe Gruters in instead of McDaniel. Like great. But what has ultimately changed? Not the way they operate in any way, not what the Republican Party stands for. The Republican legislative agenda has got to be one of the biggest rug pulls like ever. Like they just didn't show up at all with what was probably the best mandate they're ever going to get.
Yeah.
And so it's at this point, it's like, yeah, you're going to go out into the wilderness again and try and put some kind of cohesive movement together, and probably some outsider will save you and do it. And it's like, hopefully that person is a builder with a little bit more of a moral core. Or what'll happen is just the demographics are going to get wild. So it's like the Congress is like over 60% boomer, I think, still, right? So every 4 years that goes by, it's going to be like 10% less. You know, it's going to get to the point it'll accelerate, and then you're just going to have millennials and Zoomers, and it's like all bets are off. So
yeah, and the people who are the few people who are running under the MAGA banner this year are like crazy, are out there, are like I agree with you that I think MAGA could have been, if it had picked up the populist mantle that Donald Trump ran on in 2016, gotten rid of the racism and just ran on making people's lives better, helping people financially, it could have been huge. It could have been a massive movement that could have won in every state. But it ended up being like all of these weirdos and freaks, like, what was the guy in North Carolina that ran and he had all the stuff about, the porn and like,
is that the guy that's running now?
No, he was a black guy running for, I think can't remember if he's running for governor. The Mark something. I want to say his name was Mark as well. But yeah, he flamed out all this stuff about, like, he was posting on all these outlets say, I'm a black Nazi and things like that. And all this stuff started coming out about him. And it's like, what the hell? And he denied it all. And then more recently came out and admitted that, yeah, it was me, but I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to.
Mark Robinson?
Yes, Mark Robinson. Didn't want to affect Trump negatively. And it's like, shut up, guy. You're not that important that you're going to affect Donald Trump. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But now you've got the other guy in Colorado running for governor who says that he, killed a man when he was like 7. Now, the reporter said, have you killed anybody else? And he's like sat there silent for what seemed like an eternity. Just a bunch of weirdos. So that, unfortunately, that's what it turned into.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, at any rate, it's all stacked against them. I actually did polling for I don't know if I would call her MAGA, but like definitely open-minded, not establishment candidate for Colorado. And it was to go after Hurd seat. The guy, he's a sitting Republican, and I think it's District 3 or whatever. And Trump actually came out on True Social and called for somebody to primary him. And I'm like, great. Like, I did the primary polling and she would have won. She would have beat this guy and then won in the general. And that's exactly what they wanted. And so I got the polling and she got the endorsement. And then like 2 months later, Trump just randomly pulled the endorsement. And it's like, well, this guy, we needed his vote on something.
Oh boy.
It's like, so
yeah.
And she was not getting Republican establishment money. It was all money she was scraping together herself. And it's like, the establishment Republican Party, probably similar to the Democrats, is very hostile to outsiders. On the Republic, I don't know why on the Democrat specifically, but I've heard on the Republican side, it's because there's fierce protectiveness over the flow of donor bucks. And so if you come in the outsider and you're going to like upset the political status quo, you're going to get different vendors in there, different campaign managers. Then there's a turf war over who gets to take the money from the RNC and sprinkle it around like manna from heaven.
Yeah, no, our side, it's mostly they don't want the donor money to dry up, and then they don't want to, stop the flow of like insider trading and all of the, all the corrupt crap that goes on in Congress. So, people always say, oh, well, Bernie Sanders, all these years he's been in Congress, never gotten anything passed. I'm like, yeah, why? It's not hard to figure out why, because he's trying to pass policies that would actually help the American people and get rid of the corruption in DC. So, gee, I wonder why nobody else is voting for it other than other progressives. It's like, guys, it's not a big mystery. It's not because he's ineffective. It's because we're dealing with the most corrupt system of government. Like, I'm not going to say in the world, obviously there's worse, but
it's a good system. It's definitely been corrupted. You know what I mean? Like, it's the best the world's ever seen. And that's the same attack they level against people like Thomas Massie. It's like, oh, what is he? It's like, really? Like, introduce a lot of important legislation. I mean, like, that Epstein Transparency Act is not going to go away. That applies to every future attorney general, can be literally like freaking indicted or whatever. So and there's a disagreement too on the right and the left of why Trump is has handled it the way he has. But I will tell you that not know like him, we're friends, but I've been to her home and I've spoken with her numerous times. Lisa Bloom, who represented the woman who accused Trump, the Katie Johnson case, who accused Trump of violating her when she was 13. And I spoke with her. We're both vegan. So I ran into her at an event in December of 2016, 1 month after they dropped the case. And this was the first time I had met her. I walked up to her and introduced myself, asked her about the case. And she said, yeah, she was getting too many death threats. So that was, why and I said, do you believe her? Like, you sat with her, you met with her, you looked at all of the evidence. Do you believe her? And she said 100% she believed her. So, yeah. But going back to what you said about the Colorado candidate that Trump torpedoed, I said right after he won, it may have been the day after, because I did like a very long video the day after, just, trying to rally everybody because everybody was just so depressed. And I said, number one, I said, all minorities and young people are going to be the most affected by Donald Trump in a negative way. And they are going to absolutely come to regret their vote the most out of any other groups. And I said also that Donald Trump was going to let everybody down, because when it came to, 11th hour, push comes to shove, he is always going to side with corporate interests and big money donors. So, I'm not someone who says, I hate to say I told you so, because I actually do enjoy it. So. No, I think you're right. Like, the piece I'd add is that I don't think he was always that guy. And, maybe we could disagree on that. I don't think he was always that guy.
No, I definitely disagree, because there was corruption in the first administration. There was racism in the first administration. I personally think that COVID saved him. I think that the people he had around him, like the more establishment type of people who kind of kept him in line and not, running out on a limb and giving into his worst instincts on the economy, I think they saved him. I really do, because I think this would have happened. I was just having this conversation the other day with someone, or actually it was on my live stream, and I was saying, I think if Trump had won in 2020, it would have been the best thing for the Democrats because he would have like,
Yeah.
well, for one thing, the Supreme Court decision hadn't come down yet, giving him almost full immunity. So he would have had some guardrails there. But I think that he wouldn't have been able to do the damage that he's done right now.
Yeah, some
And
Democrats are definitely to blame in many ways for the second Trump administration. 100% agree
yeah,
with that. Yeah.
I agree with that. I definitely agree, but I think that COVID saved him in a way because nobody expected the economy to be good during the pandemic. I mean, the whole world was shut
Yeah.
down, so people were like, "Well, it's not Trump's fault." Every country is going through this. Every economy sucks right now because of even when things started to open back up, everybody was like, "Well, supply chain issues and backlog and all that crap." So it's to be expected, but yeah.
No,
This is the full Trump. This is like, no pants, he's going commando, like full-blown Trump. And
yeah.
that's the other thing I said. And I know for a fact I said this the day after he won the election. I said, guys, don't be down. Don't let this get to you, because what is going to happen is Republicans now have control of everything. They have the House, the Senate, the White House. They even have the Supreme Court. This is all on them. They're 100% going to own this agenda. And it's going to they're going to fall on their faces. They're going to fuck everything up. People are going to be miserable. And it's a blessing in disguise because they will get 100% of the blame and it will be accurate.
Yeah, 100%. But what I would say is like a lot of the people. So let's agree. Trump was very good at spotting what Americans wanted and saying he was going to give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on the way his approval numbers were, he was better at convincing America he was doing the right things in their interest in the first term than he has been in the second.
Yes.
And also in the first term, he didn't really use a lot of outsider money. And it's like objectively, there was probably malfeasance and fraud. I don't know how much he was personally involved with. I would have assumed they would have gone after more, like under the Biden administration, maybe not. But definitely, in many ways, he's been captured by Fox News, billionaires, his friends, his backers, Mira Matelson. Like these are, I think, objectively fair to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, where was I going with this? That his coalition in 24 that has received that product was not a solid red wall of Republican voters. And so what's different here is that there is a bunch of people who voted for Trump, who will vote for a Democrat, who will potentially go back and vote for another Republican, who wanted what Trump offered and
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily want to see the pendulum just swing back to a Biden type.
Right.
Meaning, and what does that mean in my opinion? Authoritarian overreach in some ways, like censorship, printing vast sums of money. Like these are things based on the polling that people were upset with, right? So it's like people still want the product that Trump was selling, and it wasn't a Trump. It wasn't Trump. It was the things
Mm-hmm.
that Trump was promising America. And I would love to see somebody like authentically run on that and try and give it to America, and not just say, well, the Republicans like lost and now they suck and we need to give, you know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, even though it doesn't feel like it, we are moving downfield towards a goal. The goal is the recapture of our government away from powerful and wealthy corporate and foreign interests into something that serves the American people. And what does that mean? I'm very optimistic that we're getting there, but it's probably going to be completely like torn apart by the establishment kabuki theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I also do think that the guardrails have kind of been taken off. Not kind of, they have, with that Supreme Court decision, with Donald Trump getting away with some of the crimes that he committed, like, the classified documents. I mean, that one was so blatant. You had people who worked for him, people who were involved in hiding them, who were ready to flip on him and said, they like he knew he had them. He was hiding them, tried to get at them, tried to destroy them. Like it was just very blatant. Um, and I think also, Trump is that type of personality that he will push as far as he can. You give him an inch, he's going to push a mile. And I think that's part of his, sociopathic, narcissistic personality. And I've dealt with people like that in my own family, so I know, like, the only way to stop them is, like, you've gotta be a bigger bully, and you gotta go, "Yeah, no, you're not doing that, and if
You
you do, I'm gonna fuck you
yeah.
up."
I got another data point for you, okay?
Okay.
So you're gonna like this one. So this is from January of 2023. Both President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are being investigated for their handling of classified documents. Based on what you know, are both Biden and Trump guilty of crimes? Neither of them. Only Trump or only Biden?
Mhm.
27%, both of them. 27% Biden, 28% Trump. So it's like the whole country is like, yeah, okay, fine. They both did it. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
so yeah.
and here's the thing, I say this all the time on my show, Democrats suck at messaging. I will hand it to Republicans. They are so good at getting everybody on the same message, and they just hammer it and hammer it. And the other thing they have done, which is really helpful to their cause and their party, is they have brought a lot of online, independent media people into the mainstream. The messaging crosses over. So you have, Fox News putting something out, and then it's picked up by Newsmax, and it's picked up by all the other, right-wing stations.
Yeah.
And then you've got it crossing over, and you've got Ben Shapiro talking about it, and you've got, everybody. I mean, and they took over the whole brosphere, Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon and Andrew Schulz and all of them. And so many of these people were all talking about the same thing, pushing out the same message. Some wittingly, some unwittingly, as we've learned from Ashley St. Clair, the Musk baby mama. But we don't have that on the left. I mean, the left mainstream media like MS Now, CNN, not as much CNN, but definitely MS Now, they're almost hostile to people like me, to YouTubers and podcasters. Like,
Yeah.
they do not like independent media. They look at us as the enemy. There's very little cross posting and cross messaging. And I think if I sat down with a Trump supporter and explained all of the details, because I read everything, read all of the indictments, all of the arrest, all the affidavits, everything. If I explained the case to them, they would understand, like, how egregious, how out of bounds, how completely blatant the handling of those documents and how serious those documents were, as compared, we're talking hundreds, things that he's like waving around, showing to people who just happen to be in the office, that you would never want to fall into enemy hands, or even some of our allies. You wouldn't want seeing some of this stuff, that he just treated with disregard.
Yeah.
And then lied about it. That's the thing that really made it most egregious to me. It's like, if you accidentally took stuff, or even if you took it and you're like, okay, I'm caught, I'm going to give it back. But then to, like, hide it and lie about it and pretend that you don't have it, and you just had someone move it to another room so that the person coming the next day wouldn't find it. Like, it was.
I can tell you what their response would be, and I'm not in any way want to get into a debate over this because I barely remember it. But what I would say is, like, the reason numerically it's a complete deadlock, meaning neither side won on this. Okay. Is that on the right, they thought that Trump had sole declassification authority. and that they also had a pretty hilarious looking picture of Joe Biden's garage. So in my opinion, those are the two big reasons why they probably dug in, and there's probably a lot of other stuff. And then I also think that they thought that the FBI was being politically weaponized, because I have polling that suggests 53% of America thinks that the FBI was acting as Joe Biden's personal Gestapo.
Yeah.
In retrospect, the whole aspect of them having use of force. Now, like, you guys had your other side too, and I would agree with what's happening in your media appears to be that the mainstream sources are acting as corporate gatekeepers because of advertising bucks is what is probably happening there.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Fox operates that way too. And that we do have a more robust, independent discussion, right? Like dissemination of news source on the right. But I think what you'll find is that those people aren't all necessarily on the right, because they're many disparate and they're scattering right now because they're not organized behind this thing. So it's a double-edged sword. And I like it better because I think it should be a marketplace of ideas built on people's credibility and authenticity. And so I think that's good. I think that's a step in the right direction. I will submit that you guys have another powerful tool that like nobody focuses on, that's very powerful and in my opinion dangerous, and that's Reddit. And Reddit indoctrinates people into a certain worldview, which is fine. It's a private company, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But the way that Reddit is set up, based on what we know about the way influence works on all these other sources, that it is very likely that it is manipulated by people with using the anonymous moderator system. And if you look at what, in my opinion, if you look at division as a barrier to anti-establishment coalition building, the least helpful parts of the left, in my opinion, are coming from Reddit. And that's the kind of thing like Charlie Kirk needs to be murdered. It's coming from Reddit. Okay. And so that is a problem I don't think anybody's talking about. And I think it's a massive problem. And it's a barrier to both the right and the left. Because remember, Trump had one of the biggest, most popular political subreddits on Reddit. It was the Donald. And that's one of the reasons he won. And of course, they banned it and drove out. And it's like, okay, well, if you were ever a member of the Donald on Reddit, you were getting banned from all these other Reddits as well. And so, like, there's obviously some good ideas on there too.
Wasn't that where a lot of the planning for January 6th came from? No, I mean,
well, people had already been banned off there by then. I think it was June of 2020 it got banned. And I remember I wasn't a pollster then. I was on there. I remember why it got banned. It was a bunch of outsiders brigading anti-police stuff, which doesn't make sense on Trump subreddit, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But it's like those people went to like Parler. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that people got together and organized January 6th because they all thought they were coming to some like political rally, and that Trump was going to actually present. Because there were a lot of people that thought 2020 was stolen, and a lot of them were actually not stolen, but the word is affected by fraud. And so there were a lot of people on the Democrat side who were also upset at looking at the mail-in ballots. And we had polling that showed that we did one set of polls where we asked everybody, did you vote in 2020 with a mail-in ballot? And then we gave them like a list of 4 different fraudulent things, like voting in another state, voting on behalf of another person, and blah, blah, blah. And I think it was 21 or 22% of all 2020 mail-in voters said they could at least one form of fraud. There was not a party signal. Incidentally, it was the same number of Republicans and Democrats that said that, but that election was kind of screwed up, and the right was pissed off about it. And that's what they thought they were getting as part of January 6th. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, some did, some didn't. And I say that with a lot of knowledge, because I covered every single case. I read every single arrest affidavit. I read every sentencing memo. I could tell you details that probably only, a handful of other people are crazy enough to know about these cases. But yeah, some people honestly thought, I'm going to a rally. I'm going to, and they truly believed that the election was stolen, which if they had looked at the body of evidence at details reports that Donald Trump commissioned himself from 2 independent companies that looked at everything on his payroll and said, there's like a few cases here and a few cases there, nothing that would have swung the election, nothing substantial. I mean, it was overwhelming evidence showing that it was not stolen. But
The
I
reason
know that
it's symbology, though, like symbols are important, and most of these people don't trust the federal government at all. And a lot of
right.
Democrats don't trust the federal government. And they do trust Trump because they thought
Mhm.
Trump was the person to come in and be their person to reform the federal government.
Right.
And so the way that the mainstream media, the Democrat leaning at the time, mainstream media, and Fox was MIA. So Fox was, in my opinion, part of whatever happened, right? Is that they would not address what were egregious symbols. So it's like when you put out a report that nothing happened from a government source or a mainstream media source, but it doesn't answer like why did we get 3 a.m. vote drops? Why were windows boarded up? Why did the counting stop? And if it doesn't address those symbols, then it's not going to be
Mm,
effective.
but
Look, I'm just
a
telling you like
lot
how
of
public opinion works. Like they didn't
yeah,
address
no,
them.
no,
Yeah.
I hear you. I'm just saying, like, those things were addressed. I mean, I addressed them on my show. Once January 6th went down, I know Kyle Kulinski did. I know a lot of other people did. Breaking Points did. I know that even MSNBC at the time, they did. CNN covered a lot of it, and there were absolutely rational, reasonable, legitimate explanations for all of that. Actually, Kyle Kulinski talked about it on Joe Rogan's show even before the election. He went on Rogan's show before the 2020 election and explained that, hey, here's what we're going to see. We're going to see this, what they call a red mirage, because all of the mail in votes are going to come in last, so they're going to count all the day of votes first. That is going to heavily favor Republicans. There are a lot of people who are,
Yeah.
whether right or wrong, they don't trust mail-in voting. Donald Trump is telling them not to trust mail-in voting. So a lot of Republicans are going to vote the day of. They're going to count those first, tally those first. It's going to look like Trump and the Republicans are winning. And then they're going to start counting and tallying the mail-in votes and all the votes from overseas. And though, especially mail-in are going to favor the Democrats, and you're going to start seeing things level out and Biden doing better. And that's exactly how it went down. Unfortunately, you don't have right-wing people watching Kyle Kulinski, even if he's on Rogan. And they're not watching MSNBC and they're not watching CNN. So they're not hearing the explanations. But there were also, my point was though, that there were people who I, saw their text messages, saw their social media private messages, who were not going there just because they thought it was a rally. They went with weapons. There's the police scanner that they played at the January 6th committee hearings in Congress, where you could hear the police saying, I got a guy here with a long gun under a trench coat. I got a guy up in the tree with this gun. I've got, there were all kinds of people who weren't allowed into the area, like right up front with Trump, because they had metal. They didn't want to go in because they had weapons. They couldn't make it through the magnetometers.
Yeah.
So
that's not the bulk of the
when
people
people
who
are showing up with weapons
is that the bulk?
to DC, which they're not allowed to bring.
Yeah, but like, is
yeah.
that the bulk of the 1,500 people that stepped foot on the property and therefore wound up basically in a gulag?
No, I would say,
Okay.
the bulk of the people who were arrested, who were charged, were not violent, but a good chunk of them were, a good chunk of some of them had guns. You had like the guy Reffitt down in Texas who had a gun. It fell out of his pocket when he was fighting with a cop. You had John Benuelos, who's come on my not come on my show, but I used to see him in the comment section, leaving nasty messages that I won't get into.
Yeah,
But
like this is one of those things I think we're gonna have to put behind us. Like, okay, there were probably violent people with guns, and there are some crazy people in MAGA, 100%. And there was like overreach and people who had their like constitutional rights violated as well. And like we could argue about to what extent. I don't care. Like I think both positions are kind of valid. I think the Republicans did some egregious things then. I think the Democrats were involved in an event at the end of the day, the outcome didn't help America. And not
they should have gone after the people who really instigated it, more so than just the foot soldiers, in my opinion. And I will say, I know you said Fox kind of checked out. I would argue, no, they were like right in it, pushing the whole Stop the Steal thing, as evidenced by the payout that they had to make. I mean, they had to pay Dominion Voting Systems almost $800 million.
That's because Tucker went off script.
Well, it was Tucker, but it was also Maria Bartiromo. There were several people who got nabbed, and their text messages and emails came out, and it became very clear that, they behind the scenes, they knew that it was pretty much bullshit. I mean, Maria Bartiromo had that woman on. I don't know if you saw this. She had a woman on who claimed to know about election fraud. And then it comes out that, she says that she gets messages from the wind, and she was actually, her brain was detached from her body, according to her. I mean, this woman was absolutely nuts. And this is who Maria Bartiromo decided to platform.
That's wild. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of that stuff. I would just say, like, I didn't poll the people who went to January 6th. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Over half the country, let me correct that, 40, well, we didn't ask till the year after. So it took us a while to ask if we thought the outcome was affected by fraud. What people, in my opinion, the vast majority of them were looking for was this aspect of Trump presenting all of this period of whatever he had prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether whatever he prepared was good or not, I don't know. And I think one could objectively argue for these people who had this concern that they just wanted to see this information presented. Now, obviously, there were bad actors, and the people on the right would say also there were like federal assets there. But at the end of the day, what happened is that actually, because of Republicans, none of this data was able to be presented. And so we're in this situation where it didn't actually diffuse any tension in America or make things better. It made things objectively worse. And it's mostly like coming back to this idea that the whole point of a representative democracy is that people can air grievances and not have them shut down, right? And so we should embrace people's grievances. And it's like, independent left-wing media might have been covering it, but at the time, what there was a pretty high-level gaslighting operation to say it was a big lie. And those things are effective, and that's the reason they did it. Was
though that there was a big level operation to push what Donald Trump knew to not be true. I mean, when everybody in his administration, and this is the thing too, the January 6th committee hearings, everybody who testified, with exception of maybe one, it might have been 100%, we're all Donald Trump's people. They were all, his administration, from his DOJ, his FBI, all of his handpicked people. And they all said, look, I looked at all of this. There is nothing here. I told him that. We couldn't find anything other, even, Bill Barr said, he literally called it bullshit in his deposition over it. And so when he's hearing all that, and then he goes out and he hires 2 outside companies, they give him reports saying there's nothing here, couldn't find anything substantial. When you had all these court cases, there was 61 court cases. Out of them, I think A few, yeah, they were ruled on for bullshit reasons. But even Rudy Giuliani went into court and said, "Yeah, I'm not alleging fraud in one of the
Yeah.
cases." It's like, then what are you doing here? Like, you're out on TV, you're on every right wing station and on every right wing podcast alleging fraud, but now you're saying you're not in court because of fraud. Like, what is going on? He
I
couldn't
know
bring
somewhat about that.
evidence when he was sued by Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss down in Georgia,
Yeah, so, like,
you know?
essentially, like, my understanding of that situation is that they were desperate and stepped in to try and help Trump and didn't have time or knowledge to even put anything effective together. And whether they would have, I don't know, but it's like, at the end of the day, if Trump has it, like, he's the president, he obviously doesn't control Congress, but ostensibly he has a Republican Party that supports him. And it's like, if he wants to present crap, like, let the guy present crap. You know what I mean? And like the fact that it didn't, I'm telling you, caused problems in that over the following 2 or 3 years. Trust in elections went down a lot. We can
Mhm.
point the finger at Trump, but also a lot of it has to get pointed at the way in which it was handled by and large by the establishment. And we got up to a point where 66% of America thought that the outcome of 2020 was affected by fraud. We didn't say that Trump got stolen. We didn't say, and how does it get to that level? And you could say, oh, you're a right-wing pollster. Okay, maybe the number's 60, right? How does it get that high? Well, it's the way that the media talks about election integrity things. It's the way the right handles it. It's the way the left handles it. It's the fact that people vote and they don't have to show an ID, or they get 5 mail-in ballots from their dead cousin. Like, and these things happen and they continue to happen. And I would submit to you that they're probably still happening in places like Democrat primaries in Michigan. And so, like, the right way to fix this is that there should be a bipartisan push for election integrity that isn't about the right and the left electioneering. It's like, okay, like, let's clean up the system and put people at ease that these things aren't like that. Like, I guess
Mm.
that should have been the entire takeaway from January 6th, which is like, wow, people got pissed off. Maybe they think there's something with the elections and we should work together to fix that problem. And what you're going to have is the Republican establishment doesn't care, probably because they cheat in Republican primaries in red states. And the Democrat establishment doesn't care because they probably cheat in Democrat primaries in blue states. And at the end of the day, like, things are gotten worse, right? Like, people don't trust the elections at all. And so, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just think if we looked at polling from before Donald Trump pushed the whole stop the steal thing and after it, you would see pretty big gap there, because I think that he just absolutely caused panic and fear and mistrust that was not warranted, and that he knew that it wasn't warranted, and to hear, I don't know. I mean,
Like, you're right. He validated people's fears, I think, is the right
mhm.
way to put it. The number absolutely 100% did go up during the Trump administration.
And
But
I'm
it's
not
like,
saying there's no fraud ever, but yeah, it is bipartisan, and I've covered a lot of
yeah,
right-wing election fraud on my channel, just to show that, like, look, it's not just the left that, and the right as tries to portray it as such. Um, but a lot of times it is caught, and that's why there are articles, there are stories for me to cover, because, oh yeah, this person voted twice, or this person, tried to vote without being registered, or whatever the case may be, or used a dead person's ballot.
yeah.
It is being caught. So, of course, are there cases where things get through? Yes, obviously. There was a case, I want to say it was Colorado or Arizona, where two women teamed up and they were trying to prove that there was election fraud. They were, one was an independent, one was a Republican. And so they stole, I think they stole a bunch of people's ballots and started filling them out. And they both got nabbed. Now, some of them made it through, unfortunately, by the time they caught it. But
Yeah.
they did get caught for quite a few of them and faced legal consequences. So the system does work. Is it perfect? No. But is it election altering is the thing. And I don't believe that enough is getting through without being
The
caught.
people generally disagree. And so we get
Yeah. And again, I
between,
think it's a lot
yeah,
of like people just not giving proper information.
we got up to 47% of Democrats. And I don't think that they're getting these things from like listening to Trump. And,
No.
and at the end of the day, what
But
we're
I
asking for is not like unpopular positions. It's like really a super strong majority of people support things like IDs to vote. Paper ballots are very popular. A lot of the world has them. Like, why can't that work for us? And you just see absolute 100% too many mail-in ballots. And objectively, like I did a poll that again said that 20% at least out of their own mouths of mail-in voters from 2020 committed at least one form of fraud. So the implications for my polling, including the fact that I've run multiple polls, and between 2 and 9%, depending on the national poll, of US likely voters say they're not US citizens and that they're voting in elections. So I presented that to a Republican senator's office. They looked at it and then just ignored it. And so what you see is this systematic Republican and Democrat attempt to maintain the status quo when, again, the bar in that question that we asked, the outcomes of elections affected by cheating. And you get, depending on when you ask and what election, like 55 to 66%. So like people just like, this is an institutional trust thing. Like in America, should our systems work? And it's like, it's very easy to make an electoral system that works. It is overcomplicated for a reason. And that reason is to allow selective use of election fraud, in my opinion, right? Like there's where I jump. And it's like, I think there's, and it's like when you hear somebody on the left often propose why we shouldn't have IDs to vote, it'll be because of things like racism, when overwhelming majority, 70+% of Black people say they want an ID to vote. So like, this is the problem, you know what I mean? And it's like that the right has their tactics too, but that is one of the tactics on the left to present us from having what we should have as the first world nation, which is elections that everybody trusts. And
I think people on the left will say racism, not just about Black people, but also about like Native Americans who might not have the same type of ID that's required under certain laws.
We put somebody on the moon, you know what I mean? Like we could solve that problem.
Well, I get it, but like
yeah,
you're talking about, some people who don't have the financial means to do what they need to do. They maybe don't have a car to get where they need to go. I mean, these are real issues, and I think if we want a burgeoning, or not even burgeoning, if we want a great, low D democratic, or I guess big D democratic society that functions well and where the most people vote, then why would we want to hinder that? And I'm a perfect example, and I've talked about this on my show. I was adopted as an infant, and so I don't have a regular birth certificate. It's not that it's not regular, but I don't have what would be required. Like I tried to go get a real ID, and they were like, yeah, this isn't what the documentation you have isn't going to work. Now, I was born and raised in California, lived here my entire life. So the fact that it's hard for me to get one, and then for me to get the type of birth certificate that they want with some certain code on it, I would have to go to the county in which I was born, because I tried to do it online and they didn't even give me an answer as to why I couldn't just download one online or order one online. It just said, you're going to need to go to the county in which this was issued.
Yeah.
No explanation. So I would have to take off an entire day of work, drive to another county that's like a couple hours away, spend a whole day there, and I don't even know if I would be able to get what I need because of my birth status.
Yeah, I had a
So,
story like that. I moved. It was too close to the
you
registration
know,
deadline. I wasn't sure which township poll book I was in, but I didn't feel disenfranchised. And it's like, voting is a civic duty. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like
yeah.
I would,
I
and
mean, but then on top of it, I'm a woman. My name doesn't match my birth certificate because I'm married. I hyphenated. So I mean, there's just all of these hurdles and all of these barriers, and it's like my registrate my me being an American citizen, my citizenship was checked when I registered to vote in California. So they know I'm an American. They already checked that. Why do I need something else? Why do I need to present something else now all of a sudden? So, and I think a lot of people get
yeah.
that kind of skewed and, based or when they consider California, when they're, looking at California, a lot of people on the right go, oh, well, California doesn't require voter ID. They require it at the time when you register. You have to prove that you're an American citizen when you register to vote. So then when you show up to vote, they have you in the voter rolls. And if you're not in there, they know, hey, we haven't checked this person's registration. We don't know if they're an American citizen. So you can
Yeah.
give us a provisional ballot, but we're still going to have to check before we can count it.
So like we tried to measure this and which is more important. So this is July of 22. We've
Mhm.
asked this question a bunch of times and only after 2020, but which is more important, making it easier for everyone to vote or making sure there is no cheating in elections? And the country says making sure there's no cheating, 59 to 38. So
Mhm.
38, like that's a decent amount, but it's not a majority. And on Democrats, it's a 60% majority making it easier for everyone to vote, 37% opposed. But independents are completely the other way. They're like, no, 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 cheating.
Mhm.
So like the cheating to most Americans is the bigger concern. And also we have all the problems of 2020 and the way in which it undermined trust in election. And the
Yeah.
problem with institutional trust is that nothing that's happened under Biden or under Trump has made it better. And so we're moving in the wrong direction. And
Mhm.
so when it's like, again, I'm not dismissing your concerns, but I'm saying it's like it's the same kind of thing when somebody wants to argue for like late term abortions and they list 100 carve outs. And it's like, if we agree in principle, let's solve the carve outs. That's all I'm saying. And I
Yeah.
think that the carve outs you're talking about, again, it's more complicated because there's states involved, 100%. But what on the right, what happened is they thought the election was stolen. They got somebody in office they thought was going to fix it. They thought the SAVE Act was the thing that was going to fix it. And then the
Mhm.
Republicans told them to pound sand. And so it's not like our country is not and I don't know if I think the SAVE Act might have made things better. Uh, maybe you do. I don't know, but it's like an academic exercise.
No, I
The
see it
Republicans had no
disenfranchising a lot of legitimate voters, and I think that's why they don't have the votes for it in the Senate. And I think a lot of people don't understand, if you are an outlier like me, if you are somebody who, maybe doesn't fit into the perfect mold. I think a lot of people on the right don't understand that. It hasn't been explained to them, and maybe if the Republicans did explain their hangups over it and why it won't pass and the issues with it, but they're so afraid to go up against Trump. They're so afraid to conflict with his messaging, that I think they don't want to say anything. One thing I want to go back to, though, that you mentioned, you said, a lot of Democrats also um, don't have trust in elections or are concerned about cheating. And one thing I would caution the right of reading too much into polls without getting into details, because I see this happen a lot. Like I see especially on MAGA Twitter, I'll see, oh, Democrats have, really low approval rating. Everybody hates the Democrats. And like, yeah, what you don't get is we hate them for a different reason.
Yeah,
Like,
you want
yes,
them to win. Yeah, I know.
Well, not only that, like we see them as wimpy, we see them as not fighting hard enough, we see them as just rolling over, we see them as not listening to the base, not implementing policies that we want.
Yeah.
Just like what I was saying about Hakeem Jeffries, being against Medicare for all. Like, yeah, we hate them, but are we still going to vote for them? Yeah,
Yeah.
because we
No, I
see
know
the
that 100%.
alternative as pure evil. So that, and when we look at cheating in the elections, like we saw what Donald Trump was doing as terrifying, and we saw things like what went on down in Georgia. What was it, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, I forget, where they were kicking people off the voter rolls that we see as cheating. And what they were doing was they were taking people off. Let's say you had a Hispanic person, Jose Lopez. How many people have that name, right? You're going to have a ton. I mean, it's like John Smith, right? So they were kicking off everybody with that name and saying, "Oh, see, these are fake voters, blah, blah, blah." Well, no, it's just there's a lot of people with that name, and maybe one of them was not an American citizen, but you're kicking off all of them.
Yeah.
So when Democrats say, "Yeah,
No, if
we're
that's
worried
happened,
about
that's ridiculous.
cheating," like
It should
we're
be
worried
done.
about
Yeah.
ICE showing up at the polling places and scaring away Hispanic voters.
Yeah.
We're worried about a whole host of different issues when we talk about cheating in the elections, or like, what they tried to do with the alternate slate of electors after the 2020 election.
No,
You
I get
know,
it. And I'm not
yeah.
saying that all like agree with something different than what you're saying, but I'm just saying that there's like a meaningful chunk of the Democrat voter that looks at our elections objectively without a Trump filter and says that there's something wrong with them. It's not all of them, but like, how likely is it that wider use of mail-in voting will lead to more cheating in elections? And in 2022, 41% of Democrats said at least somewhat likely. So, like they don't love
Yeah.
the idea of mail-in ballots everywhere because a lot of them probably got 2 or 3. So these things like exist. And again, I'm not trying to say it's the majority view of people on the Democrat side, but I'm just saying it's like that's how you get to a number of 2/3 of America being
Mhm.
concerned that the outcome of elections are affected by cheating, and that at this point in time, by a decent margin, cheating
Mhm.
is the bigger concern than disenfranchisement, and yet neither party will address it. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the left would be fine with no mail-in voting if we had like a national day where everybody was off work, given a holiday.
Perfect.
So you didn't have to contend
Yeah.
with going to work
Yeah.
and then trying to get to the polls. And, if you made it accessible, if you had like free rides for people who are disabled or who don't have a car and live maybe out in the boonies, things like that. So,
I love those
but
ideas.
yeah. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
all they have to do is put us in charge. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Like, and we're definitely listen, like we're definitely getting two completely different pipelines of news.
Mhm.
But like again, I think this is a very useful conversation, and like this is what needs to happen a lot more,
Yeah.
because it really is like monopolies, corporate establishment, foreign influence.
Mhm.
Like this is the problem, and I think it's more exposed than it's ever been. And so like that's when they should be afraid. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to divide, especially on the right now. They're trying to divide people more than they, I think, in my opinion, have in a very long time. And I don't like that. I think it's
Yeah.
bad for the country, and I'm going to call it out. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation, and yeah, we ran
we
really
did
long.
3 hours. Yeah.
I said sometimes I do 3-hour conversations, but
Cool.
yeah, well, thank you so much, Mark. Like I said, I really appreciate you taking out the time. I know you're busy. You've got your company to deal with, and you're getting it off the ground. And do you have any polls out?
We're doing our first national this week, and it's going to have a generic ballot. And I'm still like trying to come up with ideas. I want to get I really want to go after this idea of like, what is capitalism fair, and do you really want socialism? What does that mean to you? So do like those kind of things, and everything else is up for grabs right now. But yeah, well, so we have a website. The second I get the poll out, I'll put the full website out, but it's at thehonestpoll.com. If people want to, right now it's just like sign up for Substack notifications. And I have to rebuild my YouTube follow. We had a really good YouTube channel. I got up to 130,000 subscribers, but have to start from scratch. And we'll be putting out, like, what I like to do is bespoke, like 10 minutes, like, hey, here's what the polling means for Americans, let's get them represented and get them what they want. And that's how I try to do everything, right? It's not like, hey, we're shilling for Trump here. So
okay, so the Honest Poll, and that's your handle on Twitter too, correct?
At Honest Pollster on Twitter and at Honest Poll on YouTube.
Okay. And are those the only platforms where people can find you, or is there other places? You said you have a Substack.
Well, yeah, this Substack's tied to the website, thehonestpoll.com. And then I'll be putting out like clips on, Instagram and TikTok and all that other garbage at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
All
Yeah.
those hot
So
takes.
go look for Mark. You can find his polling there. I will definitely be following it and sharing it as it comes out. So appreciate that. So
Yes,
yeah, it was great speaking with you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Yeah, you too.